Hello folks and welcome to our game on Thursday morning here, bright and early, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed with Michael Verney and Eamonn O'Hara, of course, Sligo icon. How are you this morning, lads? Start off with you, Eamonn. Nice and early. We decided to push it forward just to make sure we could get you on the show, and you're going to be full value.
Yeah, well, firstly, to become me an icon before 8 o'clock in the morning it's a nice thing to hear. But no, all good. Looking forward to the weekend.
Is that ever something that I remember saying to Eddie Brennan recently, Kilkenny legend? Do you squirm a bit when people? It's nice to hear it, but you enjoy it.
Hate it. I do really. We do. Like you said Eddie Brennan the legend, and he is. But like, there's no doubt it's you do squirm a little bit, yeah. But in fairness, it's flattering to hear. It's always nice to hear. You get called other things as well, so you have to take both sides.
True.
Do you know, Eamonn, it's only a couple of years ago that, with the COVID stuff, Sligo didn't even participate in the All-Ireland Championship. And to be honest, like, if it was a bigger county, if you want to put it that way, that wouldn't have happened. So, like, that's where Sligo were in the pecking order. Whereas this weekend, minors are in the round 4 Connacht on Friday night, under-20s in an All-Ireland semi-final on Saturday, and a senior Connacht final on Sunday. So things have turned around an awful lot in, 2.5, 3 years?
Yeah, it's a good time. It's a good period. I suppose obviously COVID was a disaster for Sligo, and obviously Cork unable to field the team, and bitterly disappointing, and a lot of lads missed out on the opportunity. But things come full circle. The last couple of years, there's been a lot of work done at underage level, and obviously with the minors' success at Connacht level with Paul, and then obviously Desi being in charge of Desi Sloan being in charge of the under-20s, and obviously winning last year, and then that continuation to get back-to-back Connacht titles has been exceptional, and hopefully we can go one step further this year, and it's a big test going down to Kerry, but it's one that I think they can achieve. There's a real level of confidence within the group, and obviously then come Sunday there's a big game for Sligo. It's to be genuinely honest, it's going to be a tough day, I think, at the office, but still, it's great to be in them, and it's a great experience for the lads.
Just on the 20s for a second, Eamonn, like, to win one is great, but to win 2 in a row, and I don't think you're involved this year. You're involved last year, am I right in saying?
Yeah, we're involved last year, yeah.
Yeah, to win one is great, and you could say it's a bit of an outlier. To win 2 in a row, like, that's such a positive sign of what's coming in the next couple of years, but over the next decade as well.
Well, yeah, I think, the last time we probably had a competitive under-21 team was, probably 7 or 8 years ago, and then it's probably go back another 10 years since that. So, all those fellas, have been sort of blended into the team down through the years. And, in Sligo, you're always going to get 7 or 8 that'll be brought into the senior setup, and maybe even more, and obviously more competitive counties, you may not see as many coming in. So we're just lucky that right now this group, and, Desi was involved in for 2 years. He asked me to come in with them last year, and, out of the blue, I'm obviously taking all the credit for last year, because we won. But no, the work was being done. There was huge work done with Paul at the minor level, and for them to win a minor title 3 years ago was really, really a boost to the county. And obviously a lot of those lads came through, and Desi had another cohort ready to go, and the mix they just blended in together really, really well. And the guys know each other. They obviously are. Most of them come from, well, it's been unfair. We always talk about St. Attractors and Summerhill. There's other schools around the county that are contributing an awful lot as well. So, it's just we're just so lucky. There's a group there of 30, 35 lads that are used to winning. They're used to playing against the big teams and not fearing them and beating them. And it's a totally different attitude of this group.
How big is that, Eamonn, just quickly on the 20s, when you're beating Mayo, you're beating Galway, and you're beating them, regularly, and you're getting used to beating them, because you would have been on. I forget your underage career. Had you beaten them and sometimes not? No, you never beaten them.
That was go back to 94. Like 94, 95, we actually played Galway. 93, 94, 95. We had a cohort of young fellas that were very competitive as well. Nigel Clancy, Paul Taylor, David Durkin, Desi Sloan, Brian Walsh. We had a good group of players back then, and we ended up going down to Tuam and beating Galway and Tuam, and then obviously 2 years in a row Mayo went on to win one All-Ireland and then compete in another, and we had drawn in both Connacht finals against them, so we were competitive back then, but we were we had played at under 16 and under 18, and we were always well beaten. But this group haven't been beaten. And when you're playing that schools competition in A and B, and you're going up against St. George, or you're going up down against Jarlath, whoever it might be, Rice College, and you're able to beat these fellas, they just become ordinary guys, and you look at them differently, and the narrative is differently, because down to the years we were all be talking about, it's the Mayo, it's the Galway, it's the Roscommon, we shouldn't feel inferior, and you're getting psychologists in telling you shouldn't fear yourself, you shouldn't doubt yourself. These fellas don't need that. These fellas just believe it because they've done it, and they've walked the walk. And obviously the Mayo Galways probably look at them and put Sligo up on a little bit of a pedestal at this stage. But we're not getting losing the run of ourselves either. Like, it's been 3 good years, minor and two 20s, and hopefully these guys will. I think they will. There's a group, in terms of the characters and getting to know them last year, and obviously few new fellas coming in this year. There's a real sort of desire to represent Sligo, and a hunger to represent Sligo and to be successful at Sligo. So yes, the future looks good, but there's no guarantees.
And Eamonn, when you go on to the coalface of club football and your involvement with Tour Strand, and even just watching locally, do you also feel like there's no reason for Sligo football to feel inferior based on what you're seeing there?
Yeah, well, I suppose we've been very, very dominant in Sligo for the last number of years, and people find it as a criticism, and they'll say, well, it's ruining Sligo football, but it's up to other teams to other clubs to sort of come back and compete. And St Mary's have come very, very close, and everyone has given it a go, and there's no doubt about it. We're lucky in Tour Strand. There's been a very, very successful timeline for us as well, and we're sort of making hay when the sun is shining. But it's not guaranteed. I think if once we lose one, we might not win another county title for a number of years, and because of the numbers that we got, we come from a very, very small club in South Sligo, and the numbers coming through, even though there's huge work being done, are small. They're limited, and that quality may not come through, but it has worked so far for us. We've been very successful with our club, and we're very proud of the lads that are playing and performing year in, year out, and on high consistent basis. So again, long may it continue, but it's going to come to an end some point, and some team is going to come, but that competition will help. I think if we can get more clubs being competitive at senior level in the county, it'll definitely do well for the senior setup in terms of the county.
Yeah, it was about 15 months ago I watched Sligo play Tipperary in the league in Thurles. Tipperary won by 4 points that day. Obviously Tip have taken a bit of a downturn since the promotion, but what's the trajectory been for Tony McEntee's team? Because it was a third place finish in the league last year, and obviously taking a step on this year. So what have you seen in terms of development?
I suppose it really was, Tony was probably very realistic coming into the role, and I don't think he had massive aspirations to say that we're going to win a Connacht title or anything like that. Compare that to Borough Joyce saying he's going to win an All-Ireland. I think that was the way they were looking for success. Obviously, the quality of player in terms of conditioning and in terms of size, in terms of athleticism, was probably not at the level it could have been. Even though there was work being done, I just think Tony has come in and he's put shape on things. I think the general consensus would have been better if we got promoted earlier. We'd get that early bounce, but it didn't happen for 2 years with them. I think the inclusion of Colin McFadden from Donegal has definitely helped them this year, and I think. Obviously they're on a good run. I think it's 8 or 9 games in a row, and albeit it's against the lesser teams, your Division 4s. It's progress in terms of obviously getting promotion was vital. It's to get out of Division 4 is key, but it's how you maintain, it's how you develop, it's how you go forward. The goal is obviously to get up. We know we're not a Division 1 team, but I think we can definitely. Get up there top of Division 3 and definitely compete in Division 2. And that's where you need to be, because going into this game at the weekend, you're coming off a mindset, and it's so different, lads. Playing Division 4, you've got so much time on the ball. You're able to make mistakes, and come Sunday, there's absolutely no opportunity to make a mistake. You're going to be alive if you dwell on the ball. It was the first thing I learned was. I think we played Dublin in '97. I think it was in Markfish Park in the league, Mickey Moran's era, and it was just the intensity. You thought you had time on the ball, and you were getting blocked. Your mindset wasn't really at it. And these fellas have been operating at Division 3, and that's where I would worry for the weekend that the pace of the game will just get on top of them, and it's the relentlessness. It's not so much, early doors you'd be at it, but it's the repeat sets of kickouts facing that type of thing. That's just a pressure build up, and I think our lads might struggle in that scenario. So yeah, to answer the question, it's great to get out of Division 4. Important that we compete really well in Division 3, but it's on the basis of we'll be entering Division 3. And these next 4 games for Sligo are going to be vital. What do we expect of them? We don't expect to win a Connacht title, but we expect to be very, very competitive. Have the lads got a game plan for that? I don't know. I've seen it against London. I've seen them against New York, and there's still the same mistakes are happening. Both teams have exposed us a little bit up the middle. So I think we need to do something now. Whether you go to a defensive game plan, but that's only been implemented over the last maybe 2 weeks, so I don't think that'll be effective. So if you go toe with Galway, we'll be out alive, and I think it'll be just interesting to see how we manage over this week. And you just hope that there's not too much collateral damage over the next coming weeks. Yeah,
Michael, there's a huge disparity in terms of the semi-finals. Like Eamonn's already explained them there, and a victory over London and New York, that. It doesn't really set you up for a clash with a Division 1 side like this, does it?
No, it's poles apart, and I'm just wondering, Eamon, how do you make up for that deficit in class? You can't really, rip up the script of what you've been doing all year and say we're going to put, park 13 men behind the ball and play differently just for this game. So even throughout your own career, you were maybe coming from a lower base than some of the teams that you ended up beating in championship at different stages. How do you make up for that deficit maybe in class, or how do you make up for playing at a certain level and then trying to jump up to this level?
Well, I think it was the big thing was, I think, when Kevin Walsh's era, I suppose we'd obviously won in 07 and then obviously had a downtime, really bad year, going on with big heads in 08, and then obviously Kevin came in 09 and then continued for his period of time, and we obviously went from 4 to 3 to 2, and we were competitive. We had a good group of players there. We should have won a Connacht title in 10 and possibly 12, and that was the year of James Horan when he sort of went on then to compete in the All-Ireland series, and we were very, very close to teams, and we were very, very competitive in that era. So we probably knew what was required. We just sort of had a mindset, and we played an awful lot of outside top-end teams coming up to this. Obviously, with the compressed season, I'm sure Tony wouldn't have a whole lot of time in getting challenge games with, a Division 1 or Division 2 team. And you're just trying to sort of prep, and no matter how much you do in terms of your mind, you only know if you're ready when that first ball comes and your handling is that right and the intensity of the tackle. And then if you dwell that 1 second, you realize I'm in a game here. And if you're not prepared for it mentally, if you're not prepared for it physically, it's a long, long day in Castlebar. There's no doubt about that. Those times, I can remember in 07 after us winning Connacht, I was up against young Tom Parsons at 08, and we were out alive all over the pitch. And we just weren't mentally prepared for it. And even though we thought we were on the level, we weren't there. This group knows what's required, I think. But have they got the ability? And it's when you're looking at the likes of, Shea Walsh, Comer, Tierney, Cook, Burke, these fellas can get a goal in the blink of an eye, and you could be in the game and then all of a sudden you're 4 points down and you're facing your next kick out. It's amazing. Old goalkeepers, I talked to Fizzy Green and Pat Kilcoyne of the past, and they would have often said, as soon as a goal like that goes in and you're running out with the ball and you're looking for somebody to front up, everyone has a back to them. No one there to take that responsibility, yeah. And that will happen. That's just the nature. You just sort of, no one wants to make the mistake. No one wants to be the next man to make this mistake, and I won't go and support. So,
is there anything worse than where you can see it in a match yourself when you're on the ball and you literally can see some of your teammates making it look like they're looking for the ball, but actually running away from the ball?
That's half-hearted. Like it's pressure. It's the pressure of it, and there's nothing better when you're on top and you're able to sort of really squeeze a team. But there's nothing worse when you're the one that's being squeezed. And you're just looking for a little bit of inspiration for somebody, and then you do see fellas trying, but they over-try, they try too hard, and then all of a sudden they get turned over, and you can see the frustrations coming out. But I just think it's Sligo, obviously, going into the game, I just think it's about controlling as best you can, bring it down to a bit of a dogfight. It's not about entertainment, it's about making it really, really ugly, slow the game down, but it's about getting scores on the board, and I think, obviously we've got huge quality in Niall Murphy, Paddy O'Connor, Sean Carabine, 3 really, really good footballers. Throw Pat Spillane into that. Now obviously the hard-working Finian Cawley, Keelan Cawley, both working really, really hard on the line. It's just scores could be hard got the next day, and obviously, and I think it was 16 we were in a Connacht final, and it was against Mayo, and a formidable Mayo when they were in the peak, and probably could have won an All-Ireland around that time. Ate us alive, and you just hope that doesn't happen on Sunday.
Like, how good are the likes of those players that you've mentioned? Like Niall Murphy, like he fills out the jersey like a Division 1 player. He kicks the ball like a Division 1 player. Like him, Carabine and O'Connor. Like, how good are these lads?
It's a good question, I suppose. What have they been up against would be, you're only as good as what you're up against. When you're in a team of, you're trying to carry a team, you can almost become a little bit individual, and you try really, really hard. Niall, for what I know of him, and he was only coming in as a young fella, he's an exceptional talent, and it probably needs to be selfish, probably doesn't trust the lads around him as much, because he feels that he can be the one that can do it, and he does deliver. But if you don't have a foil on your left or your right, you all of a sudden can be double teamed, and all of a sudden it's hard to shine, it's hard to show, and often that has happened. Niall, Paddy O'Connor has shown flashes of unbelievable brilliance. He's a really, really good ball winner. He, on Sunday, if the quality of ball gets into him, he could cause trouble. It'll be interesting to see who Sean Kelly will pick up, the matchups. But Galway have a questionable full back line. If the truth be told, it's untested. They've got questions about their goalkeeper, so it's something we might be able to expose. And Paddy there at 6'2", he might cause a little bit of trouble. Carabine is just he's like a Rolls Royce in terms of he's not naturally athletic looking, but he's an unbelievable ability to tackle, get turnovers for a centre forward. That his work rate and his willingness to work for the team is exceptional, and his skill set is just really, really good. He got a great score. I think one of the game plans that Sligo had against New York was obviously go along with a kick out, and he did that on a number of occasions, and the nines was outstanding. I think we scored about 1-3. Nice tactic to have on the day. I don't think Galway will fall into that trap, but it just showed Sean Carabine just was able to roll his man and just dink it up and kicked a lovely point. So it was just, he has the skill set, but this is the day to show you a good footballer. Are you up there? Are you a Division 1 footballer? I think that's the big question. That's the big test for these lads, is that are they able to perform on the big day? I think they're capable of doing it, but it's you need an unbelievable performance for our defensive or midfield, and I think that to me is where we will struggle, I think.
Is that the ringtone from that TV show 24 with Kiefer Sutherland?
It's the A-team.
Like when you think of matches where you played against Galway over the years, are there moments or opponents that you think of?
Well, I had the misfortune. Obviously, I started out in 95, 96 when Galway were good. I was actually marking Ray Silk, and I can remember to this day, it was one of the weirdest things. We actually drew with them, and actually, Declan McGoldrick was our free taker at the time. He missed a penalty. We should have beaten them. Missed a penalty. We went to a replay up in Tuam. Now they comprehensively better us on the day. But Ray Silk was holding my baby finger. You know what I mean? It's to this day I remember it, but he got into my head. And when he was holding my finger, I was thinking about it rather than running away. So it's small little things you learn. And then obviously I was up against Kevin Walsh and Sean O'Donnell, Twin Towers. They were just two giants, and myself and Paul Durkin were sort of trying to keep the ball as low as possible, but they were just a formidable outfit. But we were competitive. Galway never dominated us that much. Obviously, Mayo was the team that always probably was the one that would give you the clipping. Well, I take that back. Galway did clip us in 2000, where if we'd beaten Mayo I know I can remember watching James Horn making reference to the game where he got sent off. He was an incident with me where I kind of made the most of a little bit of a bump he gave me. He got sent off. We bet Mayo, huge euphoria in Markovich Park, and then Galway arrived into town 2 weeks later, and literally it was 40-0 at half time. Like, it was one of the worst days of Sligo football. There's a picture of myself, Desi Sloan and Paul Taylor, and just in the background then is the scoreboard, where the three of us just looked like three lost sheep, like in the middle of nowhere. We just was one of those awful days. And then obviously we got competitive, and we obviously bet Galway then in 07, and at that stage then it was tit for tat. We were really, really competitive with them. Some great games against Galway, and funny, we had Kevin as the manager, and he was excellent. He would give great insight, and he was very honest and talk about certain fellas blowing black smoke, but everything he said we believed and bought into it, and we felt that we were as good as anyone in Connacht that time.
Just talk to me about this baby finger again. I'm fascinated by this. How did this come about exactly? You just holding your baby finger?
It was basically me. I used to stand in an awful bad habit of standing with my two hands on my hips, and it was just basically he just got a hold of the baby finger, and I kind of looked back at him and I was saying, and then you get involved, and then you started giving a little bit of a dig, and I was, you're a young fella coming in, you should have a bit more cop on, but he was just playing it cute. It was just that little, the act of distraction, and when that was going on, I wasn't sort of running, I wasn't involved in the play, and he was doing his job. He was taking me out of the game, but it always resonated with me, and I often tried it with a couple of lads.
I was going to ask you whether you tried with anyone after. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. You go hold a hand or just touch somebody, and they'd be kind of wondering what he at. But yeah, it's the tricks of the trade and the dark arts, or whatever you want to call it. But
it's a dark arts though, because he's an experienced player and he's thinking, how can I take this young fella, like who's probably fitter, faster, stronger than me, but if your head is gone at all, forget about it. It's
first, as soon as I knew it, it was afterwards, and I was funny enough, Lord rest my father, I was telling him about it, and he said, you learned your lesson. I said, I did, yeah. He says, it's art of distraction, and it was it's something that you sort of realize that, yeah, he won that one on me. But that was the way you do whatever it takes. There's small little things, there's subtle little things that you can just deflect, and that's exactly what it was. I remember, and unfortunately I never learnt my lesson. I remember in '94 it was Kevin Staunton with Mayo, and I would have known a lot of the Knockmore lads, and Kevin was one of the rising stars with Knockmore, and obviously they were playing in All Ireland at that time, All Ireland club, and he asked me how the family were, and it started during the championship 10 minutes into the game, and literally we were being kicked off the field, and we having a conversation with them, just silly little things, but naivety at its very, very best. But it's just they were cuteness, and how the way they played it at the time.
It's gas. We played a county final in Offaly against Kinnity in 08, and he's a counsellor since, John Glendenning. He was a touch eccentric, but he came in sub with 10 minutes to go, and he just came in and was like, well, lads, what's the crack in here? And I was just like, what is this, lad? Like, he totally inside my head, like, straight away, like, he just out of the game, like, it's mad
stuff. The best way I always found was you just make up a lie about something. You just make up and you'd have the person actually, you could see them actually. You subtly look over at them, and you can see them thinking about what did O'Hara actually say? What did he mean by that? And the game is going on, and you have a gentle reminder again of it. It's just small games, but it works.
You hear some nasty ones too. Like I heard of one player, apparently he wrote the phone number of a rival player's girlfriend on his arm or whatever to try and get into his head. So nothing seems to be off bounds, really.
It's you can step to all type of lows. Listen, I have often dealt with certain fellas, like, you know what I mean. I have a bit of a wicked tongue in me at times, and I have a way of biting back, and it's right to the bone. But as I just said, it's not a tactic I'd ever really use. It's you just get on with football, but somebody throws something at you, you can nip it in the bud. But you can see young fellas being, there's physically handling fellas, and obviously they brought in the black car for that type of stuff, and you still see it happening, and some fellas getting away with it. But listen, it's part and parcel of the game. It's no one is getting hurt, and that's the way it is.
What do we make of Eamonn, the Sam Maguire and Tailteann Cup group draws being made before we know all the teams that are true to it? So I'll bring it up here. So if you want to reference, any of the particular groups here in the Sam Maguire initially, but just the idea that we don't know who's going to be in either competition yet. We've made the draw.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I suppose everyone will honour their duty of performing really, really well, and there's no doubt you'll expect Dublin, Kerry, Galway, and well, it'll be both Armagh and Derry will be the one that you'll kind of say which way it'll be. So, funny, somebody was making the reference, Jesus, Galway might let Sligo win this one because it could be in an easier draw. There's more chance now of our Lord arriving in Castlebar on Sunday than that actually happened. But it's wouldn't it be lovely if Galway did give us a kind of title? You know what I mean? We greatly accept it, but it's just one of those ones. It is what it is. The draw had to be made, obviously, in terms of trying to get logistics and hotels if necessary to be booked for teams. So it's a logistic. I believe it's a logistic reason they did it. But they're interesting draws. You have that mini Ulster one, and obviously we could have an attractive one. Obviously, Roscommon and Kildare. Well, going by what you'd expect the results to be, Roscommon and Kildare and Dublin, and I believe Dublin could be the neutral venue one. So it'll be nice. Obviously, one of my best friends, Jerry McGowan, is involved there with Davy Byrne in Roscommon. So he'll be up against his home club or his home county. So yeah, there's lots of connection. Obviously, Davy Byrne will be with going up against his home county in Kildare. So yeah, there's interesting games there, but there's also potential heavy defeats there as well for Sligo, and this goes back to our point. And having a really, really good year this year and getting momentum, getting Division 4 will games. Obviously, you can say Kildare is one that you could target and try and win, but if they play like they did against Dublin, you'd kind of say they'd be too good.
The line's gone a little funny there, is it?
Small bit, yeah. Small bit.
Sorry, am I losing you there?
You're okay. I might just, because we'll let you go in a second because you've been really good with your time. But the last question I'd just like to ask is, when other counties are going well, like in Connacht, be it a Galway or a Mayo or a Roscommon, how does that taste with you? Is there any county in Connacht that you have a liking for more than others, or is there maybe hatred's too strong a word, but is there a dislike for them all?
See me, lads, or hear me. I as a player, I hate it all and hated their success. But as a fella now that has gone out of county football since 13 and been involved in punditry since that, I have huge admiration for the teams there, how they build and how they work. You probably get more insight. You're probably more interested in how they develop and what they do. And obviously Mayo's longevity over the last number of years, obviously really, really disappointed that they didn't win an All-Ireland, because, you just have to admire their success. I think you sort of lose that chip off your shoulder. I think it sort of dissolves away unknown to yourself, and then you sort of have an admiration for teams. And obviously, with Porrick being a friend of mine, Porrick Joyce, and I'm playing against him down to the years, to step up and say that he, success is winning an All-Ireland. I love that. I absolutely adore that in a manager and a person, to kind of be that bold and make that statement. But as a Sligo person, you want to be up there with them. You want to be able to compete with them, at least be competitive, at least let them come like our under-20s are viewed and say, this is going to be a tough day. It's Sligo. We should beat them. But Jesus, if we're not on it, we're in bother. And that's the way I always wanted it to be. You have to be realistic that we won't beat them every day, but there is days will come that we can really, really turn them over and give them a clipping. And that's what I'd like. That's what I'd ultimately like in Connacht.
Eamonn, look, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Great insight.
Good meeting you. Take care.
Good man.
And of course, to talk about the rest of the football now is John Meyler. John, how are you doing?
Morning, Shane. I feel I can talk football as well, Shane.
Can you?
Yeah, we won the All-Ireland Club in 1987.
Shane, you don't know your history.
You don't know your history.
Yeah, okay, look, it's early in the morning, John. Don't be too hard on me.
That's the point, Shane, you didn't know that. I played football for Wexford as well, so,
Do you actually pay much attention to the inter-county football these days?
I love going to the football. I down through the years here in Cork, I always love going to watch Nemo Rangers or the Bars play football, Castlehaven as well. But I love Dublin, and and I love watching the Kerry footballers as well when they go at it. But what drives me bonkers is when they start playing around with the ball in the half back line and there's no attackers or anybody's 15 behind the ball. I that's terrible, really. It's very poor entertainment.
Hurling is heading that way.
Yeah, but you can put a ball over the bar from 120 yards now, so you can cut that out, you know what I mean? And if you get a goal, then you have to come out, you know what I mean? The game could be over quickly, but games adapt, and that's really it.
Do you know, a couple of years ago I was reading, seems you mentioned back in the 80s and stuff playing football. I read Larry Tompkins' autobiography, and he was talking about playing with Castlehaven and so on. Would you have come up against him directly? Yeah.
The Castlehaven and the Bars in the 80s they were torrid affair, Shane, down in Clonakilty or down in Bandon, Jesus. And you had the Collinses, Christy Collins, Francie Collins, all those, Donald Collins, they all played with Castlehaven, and they played hurling with Blackrock as well. And Niall Cahalan, and Jesus, they were tough matches now on a Friday night or a Saturday night in Bandon or Clonakilty. Baying for blood when the Bars came down, Jesus. They were tough. They were tough matches, Shane, I tell you that. Mark and Denny Collins, I think, on the edge of the square. I was full back in football, but Christ, you earned your crust there.
Yeah, Michael?
No, Eamonn O'Hara was talking there, John, about Ray Silk pulling his finger. I'd say there was a lot more pulling and swinging going on when he played Castlehaven than that.
Yeah, no, they were torrid matches. They were tough men. Really hard matches now down there, and of course County Board would always put us down in Clon or down in Bandon, I remember one game against Bandon against Castlehaven in Bandon, and then JBM got a fantastic goal that night. You know what I mean? They were great matches, and I remember there one day Seamus Looney, Lord of Mercy on him, he was the Bars doctor, played hurling and football for Cork. But, he used to do the warm-up before matches, and he was breaking umbrellas and everything, and, rainy day and that. Yeah. They were good days, Shane.
There's a question here from Talaman GAA. Now, you were front and centre on the TV coverage last week, John. I don't know if you know about this, but how did you get on the terrace last week?
It was a fantastic view of the game. And just watching especially in the first half, Shane, or especially before the game, I watched the Waterford warm-up, Shane, and I said, Jesus, they'll be finished before the game ever starts. And they were running and sprinting and ball work at 300 miles an hour. And I said, they won't start. They were completely flat when they started. And you also get a fantastic view of puck outs, and the Waterford wing back was on one side of the field, things like that you wouldn't see from the middle of the pitch. And but the Waterford warm-up, Shane, before the game ever started was crazy, I think. You know what I mean? Absolutely crazy.
Were you always conscious of that as a manager, John? I don't know. I think you do your activation work and you do your bits and pieces, you get out on the pitch. I don't know. 15 or 20 minutes to me on a sweltering hot day is enough. What do you think? Yeah,
you really have to judge that. And I watched that the minute the Camogie match was over on Sunday, Waterford were out on the field pucking around at 2:30. And most guys come now to matches, they're already probably had a rub in the hotel. They've already been strapped up. And then when you go back into the dressing room at 3:00, what do you do? And I've asked my own young fella, in the Premier League, when they had to be there an hour and a half before a game. So how do you fill your time? And he often said he brought a book with him to read it inside in the dressing room, just to stay calm. And I always said it to him. I said, you need to play the match at 4:00, not at 2:00 or 2:30. And I thought Waterford were actually burned out before they ever started for that reason. And you kind of have to manage the time, and just to get the warm up right, you don't overexert. You don't overexert before the game. You just got to get right, and then when the throw in comes at 4:00, then you have to play.
Is that something you learned from experience, John, in terms of like the warm-up and getting it wrong at certain points and then adjusting?
Yeah. You go back and you look at matches and say, what did we do wrong or what did we do right? And you know what I mean, that we overdone the talking before in the hotel. We overdid this, and guys are coming at 3:00 into a dressing room set up, and what do? They're ready to go. So you have to kind of manage that and just tone it down until 4:00. And there's very little to be said. There's very little to be said nowadays compared to my time, you know, where you probably just met up in the hotel, had a cup of tea and a sandwich, and then just went to the match. Whereas nowadays that you know, fellas are meeting in the Rochestown Park Hotel at 1:00, and you have your you know, whatever you're having there, your chicken salad, whatever. And, you know, you get the bus down, the guard and police escort down. And, you know, there's very little talking to be done. You should do your talking, you know, in the Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday before the game. And that's really it, you know.
You were speaking about torrid affairs with Castlehaven. I presume you're expecting a fairly torrid affair between Cork and Tip this weekend. It won't be simple, I'd say, and it's a brilliant game to look forward to.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I really enjoyed the first couple of games so far. Look, you know, the word torrid was probably better referred to my time in the 80s. I think that the hurling now is speed, skill, you know, really, really good points. Hoggy got 1 point last Sunday, you know, I mean, from a tight angle, you know, a fantastic score. And you'll see that now with Tip on Sunday as well. So, look, it's going to be a hard, really, really contested game because both teams have 2 points. Both teams will really want to win their second game. And I think this is Cork's, you know, second home game. They'll have 2 away games. So it's going to be, you know, they need to have 4 points in the bag because I think Waterford are gone. You know, they've played 2 and they've a scoring difference of -9. Now, the scoring difference is going to come in here. The scoring difference is going to come in here at the end. And you remember Galway from, correct me if I'm wrong, I think 3 years, 3 years ago, they were caught with scoring difference. And there's no team wants to be caught. And Cork's last game is Limerick in Limerick. So, you know, you need to get your points on the board as quickly as possible because you'll have maybe 1 poor game out of the 4 or maybe 2. But it's how well you play when you're playing badly in these 4 matches together. And Cork need to win this. Tipperary need to win this game on Saturday night.
John, go back to last year when Cork went to Thurles and they were behind early on. Tipperary had a penalty. Looked like they could end up steamroller on Cork. Then ultimately the Rebels won by 12 points, like battered Tipperary, and that was the end of Colin Bonner, really. I mean, it's been quite a change in the meantime, but that was a big win for Cork in the sense of being able to lay down a marker on Tipperary.
Yeah, but I think there's a big win for Cork. But Cork will always play well in Thurles and playing Tipperary, you know, I mean, again here on Saturday night. But Carl has come in, Shane, and he's brought that enthusiasm. He's won 2 All-Ireland under-20s with Tip. So he'll know most of these guys, Gerard O'Connor, all these fellas, and Jake Morris. And he's won with them, and Dave won with him. And that's the trust that you get if you win with a manager. So, look, it's going to be competitive on Saturday. It's really going to be competitive. Pat Ryan has won 2 under-20 All-Irelands. Cal won the previous 2 under-20 All-Irelands. So there's a lot to play for here, and it's going to be really, really well contested.
Just on that, John, it's actually interesting you mentioned because there's a lot of similarities between Pat Ryan and Liam Cal, and we're actually chatting to both of them at the launch of the Dylan Quirk Foundation fundraising drive the other day. And I thought it was interesting some of the stuff Pat was saying. So he knows, you know, the caliber of the young fellas there, and he trusts them. They trust them all because they've seen them all. So he was kind of almost saying that there's a little bit of a fear factor there with the older players now, that they know that they have to step up, that Pat and the lads will just throw in these younger lads. They trust them. And he kind of, the one thing he keeps coming back to over and over and over again, if you don't work, you will not wear a Cork jersey. And I think it's just interesting that the lads know that he will throw these new faces in. He'll throw a Brian Roach in, or he'll throw whoever else in, Owen Downey or whoever.
Yeah, but those guys are 23. The Roaches were with me at under 15, under 16. That's going back to 2015 and 16. Tommy O'Connell as well. So you've really good pedigree in the two Roaches and Tommy O'Connell. There's really, really good pedigree there. And Pat will put him in because he's won 2 under 20. The same with Carl will throw in Jake Morris and those fellas that maybe Bonner didn't throw in last year and the previous year. So there's a trust between the player and the manager in both setups with the younger players. And Pat knows what he'll get from Roach, from Downey, from Tommy O'Connell, all those, as well as Carl will know. So they're equal on that terms. And you know, that's what will come to the fore on Sunday or on Saturday night. But I give over this thing of work rate. Cork have players in now, they've fresher, newer players in. The older guys, you know, Hoggy, Seamus, Lahan are you know, over 30 now, and he's young legs in there, and they will work. Those guys will work. That's a fact.
Do you know, like Tommy O'Connell had a difficult start last week. He had a couple of balls, I think, caught over him by Jack Prendergast, but settled down as well. Like, do you see him starting again? Do you see Owen Downey been drafted in? Look, they could rejig the team anyway they like, but how do you see the starting team?
No, I thought Tommy was in trouble early on in the first half over in as I looked at it on the left hand side in front of the stand. He was in trouble, but he settled into the game. And there's one thing about Tommy: he's a really, really good distributor of the ball. Really, really technically very good. Played centre back with Middleton as well, you know, when they won the county 2 years ago here. So, you know, he'll hold on there. Downey hasn't played for a while. You know, so Pat may make changes, but he might stick to the same team as well because, you know, they won the last day. Just put him out again. Let's see what we got. Now he has, you know, Robbie O'Flynn came on, Shane Kingston came on, Conor Cahalane came on, Owen Downey should be back. So he has options that are viable on the sideline. And, you know, he has 20 players now, and you really need those 5, 6, 7 impact subs. And they made a difference when they come on the last day. Robbie came on, he got 2 points, and it was good to see him after his injury. So, you know, I think Cork have, you know, fellas that come off, but they have to make an impact now. That's critical.
It's, you know, it's interesting, like the two teams that were beaten by Cork and Tipperary, so Clare and Waterford, they both performed really, really well against Limerick. But at the same time, we don't know, were Tip that brilliant against Clare? Were Waterford that poor against Cork? It's actually hard to get a true read on the form of these teams, John, until this weekend.
Yeah, but everybody wants to cut off Limerick because, you know, they're going for 4 in a row and things like that. So, you know, you'll raise your game for Limerick and that. But look, it's you know Munster Championship games as well as I do. Like, they're really, really competitive, and it's on the day that really matters. Now, I just thought Waterford were very poor, but I would, you know, say that Cork started really, really well last Sunday. And Fitzy came in, he got 3 points in the first 5 minutes, settled Cork, and then Cork got 1 or 2 more points on the board. So Cork got a really good settling in. And, you know, the game was more open than what I thought it would be. I thought it would be more tighter game. I thought Waterford would have been tighter, but they weren't. And like Fitzy, with that 5 minutes, settled Cork down, and I think Cork hurled then the way they can hurl then.
Okay, well, we've also got joining us now Declan Ryan, multiple All-Ireland winner with Tipperary. Declan, I think we might have, or how are you this morning? Can you hear us okay?
Very good, thanks, Shane.
Great to have you on. I suppose to start off, you're joining us basically talking about the Dylan Quirk Foundation and the drive to, I suppose, raise enough money to ensure that there are, you know, monitors for heart conditions and stuff like that with GA players across the country. So can you just talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah, we had a great launch there on Tuesday morning in Clonoughty Rossmore GA pitch, now called the Dylan Quirk GA grounds. In attendance were all the managers around, the inter-county managers. Former President Sean Kelly was there, MEP, and we had a great attendance from our own local school. Basically, I suppose it's a day for Dylan in Killarney in October. The GAA All-Ireland Golf Challenge have been very good to give us a number of slots in Killarney there on the 20th of October. And there'll be a number of celebrities playing golf down there. And people will be hopefully paying into the foundation. We hope to raise about 100,000. that's the goal anyway on the day, Shane. So I suppose just as regards the foundation, we as parents we'd all like to to be able to make informed decisions about our children's participation in sport, and cardio screening will allow that. There are about 100 young people every year die from sudden adult death syndrome, which is far too many. And as we know, information is power, and if we had more information available, we'd probably make better decisions.
And the response has been brilliant, hasn't it?
The response has been great. People have been very, very generous. Of course, it has impacted us all in the GAA world. Now we did a lovely mural for Dylan there. Neil O'Dwyer did it there in the grounds in Clonolty, and to see all the young kids coming in there on Tuesday morning from the local national schools there was, it had a major impact. But people have been very good. I suppose the GAA family at grassroots level are extremely generous, and I think Dylan's passing has impacted us all. He's the only hurling player to die on the field of play, and I think that has hit us very hard, obviously, in our own community. Dan and Hazel, his mum and dad there, Shannon and Kelly, his two sisters, but also his wider family and community, and the GAA world it has impacted greatly.
Absolutely, no doubt. John, this is something that across the country is just a hugely important thing going forward.
Yeah, I think that all players, should be screened from a cardiac point of view. It's really critical. I remember going back a few years ago, there was a company here in Cork and in the college, Heart Aid, and they were doing cardiac screening. I can't think of his name now, Ed from Douglas here. I can't think of his second name, but they were doing cardiac screening, and you know what I mean? It should be really mandatory. It's like the defibrillators that are on the wall of most GAA clubs now. These things are mandatory really, and you have to have it in place. All clubs, all players should be really screened and tested.
On that, Shane, I was down in Clonolty on Tuesday. It's fantastic. It was a fantastic occasion, and it was a celebration of Dylan Cork's life, and just to encourage everybody. I think they're asking clubs to donate €100 every club to donate €100 to the foundation, and my own club will be doing that. And I encourage everybody that's involved, that's watching, that's involved with a different club, to talk to your executive and make sure that donation is made, because it's going to the best of causes, to make sure that every GAA player over the age of 12 has basically the availability or the access to a cardiac screening, and it's just hugely important to hopefully prevent something like this happening again in the future.
But it should, Michael, it should be put into the clubs itself that the club should screen. The club should screen players and make that compulsory, like from a medical, from a safety point of view.
Definitely, yeah. I think part of the foundation's goal will be that they will actually go to clubs and help clubs to offer that facility, which will be great for them.
Yeah,
I think what we must realise is that any of us that are involved in managing teams at club or inter-county level, we don't have any idea of the family history or any of the medical issues that the players under your care might have. So cardio screening would show up any little faults that might be underlying there, and the parents could take it from there. But the more information we have about the health of our children and our young GAA players, the better.
Absolutely. Declan, just before you came on, we were talking a little bit about Tipperary and Cork this weekend. What's your thoughts on this game and how it might go?
Yeah, I was down to see Tip playing in Ennis there. I didn't see the Cork game at the weekend, but I think from a Tipperary point of view, it's a great game for Tip. Played in a great stadium. I think Liam has his men going very well in Tip here. They reflect his own personality, I suppose. They're energetic and they're fit, and they're playing with a lot of cohesion. But it'll be a big test, and I think it's a big test for Cork as well. Cork are probably a little bit unknown. Obviously, I've always had great regard for Pat Horgan as a hurler. Conor Lehane is a man that when he's on fire, he's very difficult to handle. But I think for Pat Ryan was very good to attend there on Tuesday. Pat Ryan is a very honest and decent manager, and I think that both teams will reflect their managers on the day anyway, and it should be a very interesting Munster Championship game.
Are there any games in particular, Declan, that stick out to you in terms of your own playing days with Tipperary against Cork?
With a lot of great and some very tough games against Cork over the years, and Cork always had they always had big players. A lot of them were 6 foot plus, which was, it mightn't, by Limerick standards today, that mightn't be huge, but Cork were always, they always had Mark Foley, for example, Ger Fitzgerald, Tomas Mulcahy. These were all fine big men that were well able to play the game of hurling as well. I suppose Limerick have brought that to a new level now, but I think there'll be great atmosphere in Cork at the weekend, and I think it could be a wide open game. There could be lots of goals in it, and it'll be interesting to see how it goes anyhow.
Yeah, John, like if you look at last week, my father was saying to me, geez, Cork, if they're scoring those points against Tipperary, we're in trouble. And I said, but there's no way Tipperary would miss all these goal chances. So, is there anything that, as a Cork person, well, from the Cork side, you're obviously a Wexford man as well, that you'd be concerned about with regards to Tip?
Well, I thought, I had a bird's eye view in the Blackrock end of that Waterford had got in 4 or 5 times for goal chances. No, I noticed that the Cork backs kind of converged on the big square. And Damien made a couple of interceptions and Pam made a couple of good saves and goals. So look, those opportunities arose for Waterford last Sunday, but they didn't take them. You have to take your opportunities. All very well saying Cork coughed up 4 or 5 chances for Waterford, but Waterford didn't score them, and Cork will look at that during the week and tighten up on that. Tip coughed up a few scores against Clare as well. The corner forward got 2 goals. I can't think of his name, McCarthy, I think, got 2 goals for Clare. So there are opportunities possibly at both ends. And just to tighten, I think both sides will look at their respective matches from last week and tighten up on areas. So I don't think it'll be as open as what Declan is saying there. It'll be hard, it'll be competitive, and as he's saying, it'll reflect both managers' ideologies, really.
It's a huge game for both, Shane, realistically. Like, if you can get another 2 points on the board from a Tip point of view and have 4 after 2 games, same with Cork. You're on the back foot a small bit, both with a wounded Limerick to play down the line as well. So it's I think that adds even more intrigue. It's a bit mad, lads, that the only way you're going to see this game is to be in the grounds on Saturday, realistically, with the game not been televised on terrestrial television, or it's not on GA Go as well. There's only a certain amount of people that can get into the grounds, and for the couple of 100,000 other people that want to watch it, I think it's a bit how I don't understand how, when you're scheduling GA programming for a weekend, Tipper playing Cork in a hurling match of any description, you televise it, especially when it's a senior Munster Championship game. I just can't get my head around how the game's not going to be broadcast in any medium.
It's on GA Go.
It's definitely on GA Go.
Yeah. I just don't.
Okay.
Check.
Well, it should be live on RTE.
Yeah.
There'll be a bit of buffering, and there'll be a few circles in the middle of the telly. You know what I mean?
Declan, in terms of the Tipperary team we're seeing this year, what players have impressed you, or even just the style of the team? What have you made of it?
Well, I think the first thing to say about Tip is they're extremely fit anyway. Jake Morris is he's a player that can destroy you in 10 minutes. We saw that down in he seems to have added a little physicality to his game this year. We've known in Tipperary since his underage days that he can get goals. I suppose the Michael Breen experiment at fullback has been working so far. I think that will be further tested on Saturday evening below in Cork, and I think we have a goalie with an extremely good puck out. So there's a lot of positives in Tip at the moment. We haven't been as competitive maybe in the last couple of years as we would like in Tip. So I think Liam is just getting to grips with the guys he has brought through from his underage management days, and the guys that have been there long term. It's good to see Cathal Barrett back there fully fit again, and I think he adds a bit. Great to see Johnny Ryan from Arraville Rovers there as well. Johnny is the first Arraville Rovers that'll be Tipperary Town now player to play for Tipperary since John O'Donoghue. I hope I'm not leaving out anyone there, but John O'Donoghue played back in Babs Keating's days, so that's a while ago. But Johnny has made his mark there, and he's aggressive, he's tigerish, and he's the type of player that Liam likes to have in his squad.
Do you see many changes for Tipperary this weekend? I mean, Conor Stakelum did very well when he came on the last day. You have the option of putting Seamus Kennedy in the backs if you want more pace back there. Or do you see him going with the same team?
I think he'll go with more or less the same team, bare injuries. And I suppose the game is so physical now, and we saw both Waterford and Limerick struggle to recover in the week after a hugely physical game in Thurles the week before. So, injuries are going to play a big part, I'd say, in the championship this year. But I think we're all looking forward to the game. Hopefully the weather will be decent and there'll be a good crowd. There will be a good crowd in Cork, no doubt. We met a couple of people from RTE there at the launch on Tuesday of the Dylan Cork Day for Dylan in Killarney, and I think they're as disappointed as anyone that the games aren't being shown on RTE. You just wonder how far away from the ordinary GAA supporter we're getting at the top in the GAA. That's a big concern, I think.
Mm.
There's a comment after coming in there, Shane. I think it's worth reading out from Matthew Landy. He just says the GAA is a business now more than anything else, looking at what they're doing. GAA Go, online tickets only, etc. It's mad to think of how much money they make each match and no player makes a cent. I have to say that the idea of particularly elderly people that maybe don't have smartphones, how difficult it is even to get into a game now. I just think we're losing the sight of what the GAA is a small bit, and I just can't get my head around how. This is the biggest hurling game of the weekend by a mile. We're going to be flooded by football in a month or 6 weeks' time with this new All-Ireland football structure. I just can't get my head around how the game's not on RTE at the weekend.
But that's where we're going, Michael. There's a new wave of people out there that only know IT, that only know the web, that only know these devices. And you know what I mean? Like I couldn't get into the ticket for down the match in the park last Saturday, and I rang my daughter. I said, "Would you ever?" I just can't get into it, and she fixed me up. There's always somebody will look after you, and that. But I think I've always advocated that the GAA should be live streaming of matches, and own their own rights to those matches rather than giving it to RT or somebody like that. Put all those matches up on live streaming, and we get access to an awful lot of club matches on live streaming as well. A lot of matches are just up there on just matches on this live stream. That's the way it's going.
Yeah, we're probably living in a world of change at the moment, and there's an awful lot of change in the GAA as regards getting matches on television and going to matches and the online ticketing. Maybe the change is coming thick and fast at the moment, and it's difficult to keep up, and especially for people of a certain era. It's my own father is a man there. He's 81 years of age, and he doesn't have a smartphone, but. I think he's typical of a lot of the men that have given their lives to the GAA, but they're finding it more difficult to get to the games that they want to get to now.
Declan, can I just ask you? I'm going to put a picture up on screen here and ask you what do you think of when you see this picture here? Yourself, Lara Corbett, and Owen Kelly. It's a picture that's been trotted out many times over the years, and I'm just wondering, what's your recollection of this and having two of the future stars of Tipperary hurling either side of you?
Yeah, that was a picture that was taken below in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. We were playing Clare, and the two boys. I suppose I was coming to the end of my days. If Nicky was manager at the time, and I suppose if he had to be doing his job right, he'd have kicked me out the door. I'd have been gone out to grass. But Owen and Lar were young guns at the time. They were coming in, and I suppose I just felt that. The Clare backline at the time were very solid, very physical, proper men playing proper championship hurling, proper Munster championship hurling, and it just so happened that we came together for the national anthem below that day in Cork, and that's where that picture came out of anyway. But the two boys went on to have fantastic careers. Two super, one, well, I suppose both goal getters. Lara in particular, I think he's the top scorer of goals in Tipperary Championship, up to Shamie Callan there. But Owen Kelly was a phenomenal man for scoring as well for Tipperary. But that's a long time ago now, and I don't think the jersey or the togs would fit at this stage.
A question I want to ask you both. I remember asking Aidan Ryan about this before, Declan. It took him a few years to be able to adjust to not playing anymore, and he said he used to go to inter-county matches with Tip, and he'd be all fired up even though he wasn't playing. Did it take you long to adjust to not playing when you went to matches after retiring?
I can remember going down to Cork again, and I retired after the All-Ireland final in 2001, and I can remember going down to the first game Tip played in 2002 in Cork again, and seeing that we were actually going into the game and the bus passed in. It was a strange experience. We actually stayed in Cork the night before, and
I think you've hit mute by mistake there, Declan, on your phone. I'm not sure.
Don't know if you can hear us there, unfortunately, at the moment.
Declan, if you can hear me there, I think you've hit mute on the phone. Yeah. It's still muted. The joys of going live.
That's live streaming the buffer.
Yeah. So hopefully Declan will be able to click back in
That's difficult, Shane. Like what Declan was talking about there. That's difficult. I'm 66 now, and you go down to the park last Sunday and you see beautiful turf, you see beautiful grass, and even looking back to my own time in the 80s, and you know what I mean, the pitch was still good, but look, you miss the games, and you'd love to be out there. I'd love to be out there playing. I really would. I'd love to, and have all the facilities of gyms and everything like that, and diet and nutrition, and which we didn't have in those days. But look, they're fantastic spectacles. So
I presume, John, anyone like that, in their mid to late 30s thinking about calling it a day, or will I go another year? You can only play for a certain length of time. Realistically, you need to extract every ounce out of yourself, because once you finish, once you're done, you're done.
Yeah, well, once you're done playing and that, no, I give up playing, but then I got, I was coaching before I ended up playing, so I kind of kept my hands in and things like that, and I got involved with Cork underage teams. And I get great enjoyment out of seeing young lads develop and things like that. So you're still really involved, but you miss the thing yourself. And fellas that say, sure, Eamonn playing hurling, then it was only skullduggery and things like that. Do you know what I mean? Because there's only hatchet men, and where I'd love to have run into one or two of them. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure Declan would love to run into one or two of the Cork fellas now to see what he's like, or they're like. Do you know what I mean? So. And they have fantastic facilities now, and fantastic pitches, and they're well looked after with gyms, with diet, with nutrition, everything,
Declan, I just throw that one to you really quickly. So John talks about the facilities now, and better quality of hurls, better quality conditioning. People would say, looking back at hurling 30 or 40 years ago, oh geez, you weren't playing hurling at all, maybe, as John says. But if you were around now, do you think you just adapt to the way hurling is now, and adapt to all the level, the advances in conditioning, and you'd be as good as the hurlers are now?
Well, there's some fantastic hurlers around now. I think the skill levels today are incredible. The ball striking from the Limerick half back line is an example, and some of the puck outs that can be hit, if need be hit, almost to the edge of the square. I think there's great credit due to players that are playing at the top level now. It's a lifestyle from start to finish. I don't think when we were playing, but we gave it that much attention and give that much time. When you see the physical condition of the guys that are togging out, a couple of years ago, the hurlers wouldn't have been in the same condition as the footballers. The footballers would have been physically in better condition, but you can't say that about today's players. Today's hurlers at the top level, they put in a phenomenal effort, and they're probably, majority of them are down around 10% body fat. Which wasn't always the case in 20 years ago. But
I tell you, it wasn't always the case. It was that you were the minority if you were below 10%.
No, I think the game today is fantastic. I love watching the game. I particularly love watching a team like Limerick that can play the style of play they're playing. Maybe some of the rest of us are trying to emulate it. We're not as good at it yet anyway. Whether we should revert to maybe a more traditional style and see if that can compete with the Limerick style of play or not, I don't know. But the touch, I've watched back at games there where I've seen guys going for the ball once, twice, a third time, and next thing the ball ends up out over the line. But you don't see or see very little of that in today's game. It's the majority is one touch and straight into the hand, and the score taken and the accuracy of today's player is way ahead of when I was playing anyhow.
In terms of like the best players you ever played with, Declan, who comes to mind when you think of the most skillful man you ever played with?
The most skillful man I ever played with? Well, I suppose when I was younger, John Fenton was certainly the best ball striker in the game when I was starting out. As regards some of the best players, well, I had a pretty harsh introduction anyway. Again in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, in my first day out in championship, I played on Leonard Enright, who was a legend of the game and a legend for me as a young fella. I went on then to play on Jim Cashman. Fergal Hartley's a player doesn't get a lot of mention there from Waterford. These are all great centre backs and full backs of the game. And then I had the misfortune of having to play on Tony Keady, and also played on the great Johnny McMahon of Clare and Kieran Carey. So unfortunately, most of them outscored me in the games I played on them, even though they were in the backs and I was in the forwards. But anyway, Nicky English, I suppose, was always up there in Tipperary, and Michael Cleary and Johnny Lahey would be all hugely skillful players. And of course, the great DJ then. As a hurler, sure, he was skill-wise, he was lovely to watch.
Who's the best player you ever played with, John, or is this an obvious answer?
An obvious answer. Jimmy Barry would, have been streets ahead of anybody. He was always, a half second ahead of players. And, you see really, really good players who have that ability, like as you mentioned there about Owen Kelly and about Lara Corbett. They're half a second ahead of players like that. But Jimmy was unbelievable. Really, really top class player.
Declan, before we let you go, do you see Tipperary getting out of Munster this year?
I think it's all to play for at the moment, and we'll be very quickly down to knockout games. I think in Munster where it is do or die. So that's certainly something to look forward to. Are Limerick going to be able to get back to where they have been for the last number of years? I think they're too good to be gone out of the championship before it gets to the All-Ireland series. That's my own view. They have a little bit of work to do. Cork, Tipperary, Waterford, Clare, we're all shouting for our own teams, I suppose, and we're looking forward to what's coming down the road. And the longer this year goes on now, the closer we're getting to knockout hurling. So that's certainly something I always look forward to anyhow.
Okay. I think Declan, like that, Waterford have played 2 and lost 2, and they're -9. So that potentially rules them out. So it's down to 4 now. 3 out of 4, and that's where Saturday's match is so critical in the sense that whoever wins this match, or even a draw, would suit both teams. You'd have 3 or 4 points on Saturday night, and that's critical because Cork's 2 games are away to Clare and away to Limerick. Limerick have a 3-week break. Sean Finn has an injury. Cian Lynch has an injury. 1 or 2 little issues. 1 or 2 little discipline issues which arose in the last few weeks. So there's little things that come in there, Declan, that would affect the team's performance. And I think Limerick really, really need to depend on Cian Lynch being right and on his game.
Yeah, well, I think any team, if you look at any of the great teams down the years, and we can put Limerick in that bracket, I suppose, but any of them that haven't had their best 15 on the field, their best 16 available, they've struggled. And, Limerick, I suppose, are maybe in that situation at the moment, but they have a great manager over them there. They have a great coach. I think they have a good backroom team there. So if anyone can get it right for the right time of the year, I think it will be Limerick. We know they have the potential, but they're on the go a long time, this group of players, and it gets to a stage where mentally maybe you don't have that energy that you need to compete at at that high intensity level. So I think it's the most interesting championship time now we're facing into for the last couple of years, I think, anyway.
Okay, well, look, Declan, been brilliant to have you on the show, and best wishes to everyone involved in the Dillon Cork charity fundraiser. Yeah, and thank you to everyone for their support. It has been hugely appreciated, and we're very grateful as a community, as a family. We're very grateful to everyone that has given their support in whatever way possible. Okay, thanks very much, Declan. Thank you.
Cheers, Declan. Good man.
And to jump on to predictions for this weekend, John, and then we wanted to ask you about Wexford Dublin if you have a little bit more time. But how do you think Cork and Tip will go? I mean, to be honest, I'm struggling to come up with anything other than it'll be a puck of a ball. And
I think it'll be close. I think it'll be competitive but close. I wouldn't even rule out a draw. I think if you offered both sides a draw now, they'd take it. But we need to win this game. That's what both managers will go out and say. We need to get to 2 points, get to 4 points, and then, we've a week or 2 weeks to sort out any little niggles, any little bumps and bruises and that, and then to go into our respective 2 matches at the end, which is Clare and Tipperary, or Clare and Limerick away for Cork. So both managers, both teams, look, this is massively important on Saturday night.
Yeah, Adrian McGrath says Tipperary will want a very physical style to prevent Cork running at them. Will Harnedy and Fitzgibbon going down to get Waterford players carded cause problems for Tip hurling in that way? So tasty little one there. But that whole thing about Tip don't want a really open game with huge space everywhere. Both teams like to hurl and all that, but Tipperary are struggling if Cork's pace comes into play, John.
Yeah, well, the first 5 minutes last Sunday proved that with Fitzy got on to 3 balls. He put 3 balls over the bar. So, Cork had really settled in. But it's all very well saying Tip don't want an open game, but how do you prevent that? Okay, you go man to man. That's if you go man to man, you're going to have to follow your forwards. You're going to have to follow. That leaves gaps behind you. And at times last Sunday, the Waterford defence was wide open. Fellas were coming through. And that's where, you mentioned Tommy O'Connell there. Tommy O'Connell is really good at distributing the ball, and it's really good. Downey made a couple of sallies up the field. He got a couple of great scores. And so, look, the game is open today anyway, you know what I mean? So, because there's no positions anymore about who's corner forward or corner back. There are no positions anymore. It's a wide open game.
We'll let the neutral man throw in his spake here. What way do you think this will go, Vernie?
Well, you laughed me out of the house when I said Kilkenny and Galway might be a draw last weekend, and I honestly think that's the most. I think that's.
You laughed me out of the house when I said Clare beat Limerick.
I don't think I did actually.
And when I said that Luca Brissell would beat
I did laugh you out of the house for that. I think it could well end up a draw. I find it very hard to go either way. As John says there's so much at stake for both. They won't play for a draw, but I think that could be a tasty enough option. Probably about 8-1 or something like that. But I just when you're looking at 2 teams and you're thinking, okay, Tip probably capitalised on a lot of mistakes that Clare made the first day. They'll improve a hell of a lot for that 2 weeks later. Cork maybe weren't thoroughly tested the other day against Waterford, but they'll improve again as well. Very, very difficult game to call. And a draw is probably where I'd be looking. And it's amazing. A draw would throw another spanner into the works, into regards points totals at the end and things like that. But both of these want to end up on 4 after 2 games. That's the ideal scenario. But I think they might both end up on 3.
Yeah. What's Pat Ryan like in a dressing room from your knowledge, John?
I was involved with him in 17 as a coach. He's very calm. He's a good guy. Knows he's hurling. Coach Stars club here in Cork, winning counties here. Was involved with the under-20s. Calm guy. Delegates responsibility to the management team, but he has good people with him as well. Donald O'Mahony is with him. So look, I think a lot is too much is made today of the manager. There's an awful lot of people within the back room that have massive inputs, really quality inputs. So you see Kinnerk in Limerick, and Cork have much the same setup and that. But the players must take more responsibility nowadays, Shane, rather than just the manager. It's not about the manager, it's about the players, and about you have good people working with them. Then I've always maintained that, that's really it. But Pat is solid, he's calm, gets his point across. Remember in 17 when he was the coach, gets his point across, goes through it meticulously. So he's a good guy. But Carl is quite similar. Both of them are similar type characters.
I'd say on John's point there, I'd say the manager sets the tone, the players carry it on then. That's kind of it. You know what I mean? They see the tone that's been set by the management and the coaches, and they drive it forward. All successful teams they're guided by the management, and then they're kind of almost like self-driven thereafter, I'd say.
Yeah, but in my day, the manager was God. He was he ran the show. Nowadays, the manager is only just the conductor of the orchestra. That's all. He just puts, I don't know how many is in each backroom team, but like you have an inner core of 6 or 7 people that you really, really trust, and it's getting those to get the best out of the players. But players today, compared to my time and Declan's time there in the 80s and that, they take on more responsibility. So there's, you can't be shouting and roaring and things like that. It's a totally different preparation than what was there before. And you let players take ownership of it. And it's like what Declan said, that the skill level and all those has gone up. That's because the players have taken responsibility and ownership of it.
John, the 2 teams that were beaten last weekend, Limerick and Waterford, what do you think their prospects are for the rest of the year? Like, is the bulletproof aura gone from Limerick, and what can Davy Fitz do to turn around Waterford? I mean, obviously you weren't impressed with the warm-up and the performance was poor.
I wasn't impressed. No, I thought it was crazy. I wasn't impressed with it. You have one of the best hurlers, if not 2 best hurlers in Waterford. You've Austin Gleeson and you've Jamie Byrne. And Gleeson only came on as a sub last Sunday. Whether he's injured or not, Austin is one of the best players in hurling at the moment. And you have the bench. I felt really sorry for Tyg de Burka going off, injured in the first game. So he's a massive loss. But Waterford have really, really top-class hurlers. Ballygunner have been doing really, really well in the club championship in the last few years. So there's something wrong somewhere there, I feel. That they're not getting the best out of those players. The Bennetts are top class. Austin is super. Jamie Byrne is super player. They have super players. Prunty at the back as well. There's something wrong somewhere. And
just on your point there, John, when you look at the personnel that Waterford have, you're kind of wondering what's wrong here. Because when you list them out on paper there, throw Caleb Lyons in, throw Jack Fagan in, throw Desi Hutchinson in, Jack Prendergast in, Mikey Kiley. Like, to me, the personnel is there, but they obviously performed to some extent against Limerick, but it was a no-show the last day.
Yeah, but everyone wants to crack off Limerick. You know what I mean? It's easy to say we're playing the All-Ireland champions, going for 4 in a row. We want to get the finger out and we're going to have a cut. You have to perform in all the matches. There's 4 matches you have to play. And as I said to you earlier, it's how well you play when you're playing badly. It's not how well you play when you're playing well. It's how well you play when you're playing badly. And Waterford have potentially a really, really good players. And I just, I think... I don't like saying I think their season is over, but they're on 0 points out of 4. They're on -9. That's not equivalent of another point.
-11, I think.
Is it -11?
Yeah.
I can't see them, Michael, making up that gap. Then you know what I mean. Like they will need, they'll need an awful lot of luck in other fixtures. So Waterford will be depending on other fixtures to get out of it. To get out of Munster, and I can't see them getting out of. Munster. Limerick, I said to you, there's a few cracks there. There's a few discipline issues, players being sent off. Small little things that you're drawing attention. Like if you go back and look at Kilkenny, the successful, Kilkenny teams, and that there was never really much publicity around, being sent off and things like that. They've 1 or 2 injuries. Cian Lynch is critical to them. And Sean Finn might have, a slight injury problem and that. So little cracks coming that if you need to close them off. They can't open or get bigger. But they have the potential. If Limerick, Kiley can get his 15, 16 players on the pitch at the right time. And again, their mental energy and their physical energy will be drained by the last few years. But the sign of a good team then is when they're really, really under pressure, to come back, and get back on the road again. And, they'll have a tough run in now with Cork as their last game. Cork could need that game to stay in the Munster Championship. So
just on Waterford, Shane, as well. What Waterford need is they need a draw on Saturday night. So both of those teams are on 3. They need and they need to win their last 2 games. And they need Clare. So that would leave Limerick and Clare ahead of them, and they could potentially go through on 4. They need Tip to lose their last 2 games, and Cork to lose their last 2 games as well.
Yeah, there's an awful lot of ifs and buts in there, and they're -11, Michael. Like that. Jesus, that 9 points defeat last Sunday. That opens up a crack.
And John, like you saw last weekend, Gearóid Hegarty was left on the bench. Now, I think we're all reading it as he was basically been punished for an indiscretion against Waterford at the time, red carded, whether John Kiley wants to admit it or not. Have you ever had that situation where you kind of dropped the lad over a red card, and was it risky doing that? Like, did they suffer themselves against Limerick because he wasn't on the field?
I think Limerick suffered. Yeah, you put your best players out. Look, there's very little room for manoeuvre in the Munster Championship. You have 5 teams at the start. There's very little between them on a given day in Thurles. As you said there, I expected Clare to beat Limerick. No, I didn't. I thought Limerick would beat Clare. So on any given day, one team can beat another team. And that's in Munster, and that's a fact. But you know what I mean? I've done stupid things in my time as manager where you leave people off and you think you're doing the right thing, and it's a total mess. And you know what I mean? When you look back in hindsight, he should have played Gearóid Hegarty and things like that. You know what I mean? So look.
How do you think Wexford are doing? I mean, the first couple of games, they were beaten handsomely enough by Galway, despite getting 2 early cheap goals. And in the last day out, beat Antrim by 4 after leading by 9 at half-time. So they weren't exactly pulling away in the second half. This weekend, it's a trip to Croke Park rather than Parnell for Dara Egan and co. How do you feel Wexford are coming into this game, John?
I think they're iffy. Very iffy, as you said. They're struggling against Antrim last week. To be driving on 9 points up at halftime, then to be really driving on. I didn't expect them to get anything out of the Galway match, and playing Dublin on the weekend in Croke Park. I'm actually delighted Dublin are gone into Croke Park. This thing of playing hurling in Parnell Park is, I just could never figure out why Dublin would play there. They need to be in Croke Park. They need to be exposed to the bigger pitches and that. And they're more athletic. They're better hurlers than what they showed in Parnell Park. But look, Dublin will feel that they can get 2 points here as well as Wexford. So it's tight. It's hard.
Yeah, this game, I'm not sure if Eoin O'Donnell is going to be right for it. He came off after 64 minutes against Wexford the last day. And generally, if Conor McDonald is starting, he tends to do a pretty good job on him. Yeah. Do you think that Conor McDonald, Michael, I'll throw it to you first. Do you think Conor McDonald is going to be restored to the team here? Who's going to pick him up if Eoin O'Donnell isn't playing? Lee Chin, who will be detailed on him?
Yeah, not so sure. They didn't play him the last day. Obviously, they played kind of a rotating forward line, a lot of real kind of mobile players, and they all kind of moved around. Cottle Dunbar came out to pitch. I think he ended up at 1-2. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if McDonald was left off again. He's obviously a real potent weapon at the edge of the square. Maybe doesn't offer some of the same mobility as some of the other lads, but Rory O'Connor was in around the goals the last day. He ended up with 7 points. Chatting to Dara Egan the other day, he said Lee Chin is, remember we said on Monday's show about him taking the free off his left hand side. That was basically because he is still struggling with his shoulder. So that's obviously a knock that hasn't gone away. And his fitness is absolutely crucial to them. Like I think he ended up with 6 from play the other day, but it's not even that. And John, from being involved in a team, when a marquee lad like that, he just takes attention. He takes attention, a lot of close attention, and someone else might prosper even if he doesn't. And he sets up so much play, and he's so good under a high ball. So his fitness is crucial, and getting a full game into him is crucial. Liam Ryan came off the last day, but Dara Egan was saying that was just a minor knock. I think I forget what it was, but he said it had cleared up in a couple of days, and they're hoping to have Damien Reck back on the pitch as well. So they're fairly close to the best 15 they could have. They need everyone, but when they have everyone, you know, they're well capable of beating a Dublin and beating it even maybe a better quality opposition as well. So that's going to be a fascinating game.
Yeah, but they need to beat Dublin, you know what I mean, to get, as you know, every game is critical then to get their 2 points in that, without any injuries, and try and get a few of the fellas that are injured back in that. So look, it'll be competitive, and you know, but Dublin will relish playing in Croke Park. I think that's, you know, that's good for Dublin.
Yeah,
just as well as that, Shane, as well. After Dublin draw Antrim, like even a draw is really no good to Dublin unless they're able to go and beat Kilkenny or something like that. They need to get 2 points on the board here.
Yeah. They do. I'm looking forward to the matchups. I think it could be Dara Gray on Lee Chin. I think maybe Paddy Smith on Rory O'Connor, unless John Bellews has to start for Owen O'Donnell. Like if Owen O'Donnell doesn't start, I'd very much make Wexford big favourites for this game. But that should be a pretty tasty one and definitely very physical. John, just before we let you go, you've been brilliant with your time. We know you're going golfing, so we want to let you
have the Ryder Cup top on and everything ready to go.
I'd say every viewer noticed that almost straight away.
No, but John, we went to Paris there in what 2019, I think, was it? I'm not sure, and it was fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah,
just want to ask you, I'd love to ask you about loads of things, but just to kind of bring it to Kerry, they're playing Offaly this weekend in the Joe McDonagh Cup, and obviously
massive game.
Yeah, can you talk about where Kerry are at, and like if there's a case of now or never, like are there more players coming through, or is there some players departing, and is this their window?
No, just, you know, Kerry are bordering on the Joe McDonagh. You know, they're at the same level as Offaly, Laois, Antrim, these teams. They're bordering on the Joe McDonagh going into the Munster Championship. But look, I've always been an advocate of Kerry playing in the Munster Championship, but the way the Munster Championship has developed since the round robin, you know what I mean, has kind of created a massive gap between Kerry and those 5 counties in Munster. But they have a really tough, hard match now away to Offaly on Sunday. John B, the goalie, got a belt of the ball in the lower regions over the weekend, and I would advocate that all goalies would wear a cup, you know, to protect themselves. And thank God everything was saved with him. And Daniel Collins is injured, so they're missing key players. You know, they're missing key players against Offaly, but it's a critical game for Kerry because their last game then is against Laois. And you know what I mean, there's 4 teams there really in the Carlow, Kerry, Laois and Offaly, and it's really competitive. So you know it's going to be hard, but you know Lumphy got a good rattle out of them. They're now in the last game against Kildare. So look, it's competitive, you know.
John, what handicap are you playing off?
I don't have a handicap. I'm just playing social golf at the moment.
You see, it sounds like you're cooking the books so that someday you can go into.
No, I would not. No, I don't cheat. No, sorry. No, I was a member for the golf club here in Cork. My 2 hips went. I had my hips done. I'm back playing social golf. I play with a few buddies, and I love playing 9 holes. I played 13 holes in Monkstown on Monday in the afternoon with John the Painter, friend of mine, and Niall Cronin, and it was most enjoyable day. Sun shining, played 13 holes, missed 2 birdie putts, and you know,
did you actually
really
did you get pars or did you end up with bogeys on those?
No, I only talk birdies, that's all. I missed the birdie on the 4th hole and on the 13th.
Well, look,
John, I'll be in touch for the Burgea Golf Classic during the summer. All right, we could do a bandit.
The what? The bird?
Burgea Golf Club in Offaly. I'll be in touch during the summer.
Yeah. No, I'm playing in the Ballyhooly. The Ballyhooly GA Club Golf Classic. One of the lads involved with me, the under-16s, Peter Sykes, he asked me to put the team in, and so we're heading to Fermoy on Friday. I think it's Friday fortnight for 18 holes of the champagne scramble or something. That will suit me. So a bit of crack, Shane. It's just at my age now, you enjoy it.
We have a comment in here from SSRI saying 30 years since Kerry dumped out Waterford in the championship.
25th of May 1993. Yeah.
Did you ever meet up with those boys?
I come across them in Kerry. Christy Welch, you know, we had a fantastic team at the time. Lord of Mercy on Seamus McIntyre, the guard that was killed here in Cork. from Ken Mayer was cornerback, Mike Casey, Joe Walsh, Christy Walsh,
Is that Christy Walsh that's involved with Kilkenny football now?
Yeah.
Ah, very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
One of the best hurlers, I've ever been involved with as a manager, like, you know what I mean? And he was in Kilkenny with Bennett's Bridge and that, and he played there, and they could never get him to. I think Nicky Brennan, when he was manager, Kilkenny was trying to get him to play hurling with Kilkenny. But a big, strong man, same as Declan Ryan, that type of a character, and look, that's 30 years ago, but there was only about 25 people in Waterford that day, Shane, when we won, and there was no camera, no phone, nothing, no video of it, you know what I mean? And Liam Cotter was vice chairman of the county board, and he sang the Rose of Tralee in the dressing room afterwards.
And were you telling me before that lads were showing up, some of the Kerry lads were showing up with their gear in plastic bags, whereas the Waterford under-21 All-Ireland winners from the previous year were...
Yeah, they were like the Liverpool soccer boys. They turned up in their jackets, and now we didn't turn up in plastic bags. I kind of made that a bit sensationalist, but we were turning up with, the way you did those 30 years ago, Shane. You had a bag with a pair of boots in it, but they turned up in their blazers and jackets and getting photographs taken. I said, "What? Who's taking the piss here? Like, don't this is real?" And Christ, then we were playing Tip. Then 2 weeks later, what did we do? Then we got gear from the county board. We got slacks. We got jumpers. We got.
The boot was on the other foot. Yeah.
Yeah, and we turned up then with rainbow-coloured jumpers up, and Jesus, like, up in Turles, and Tip turned us over then, and Declan Ryan, I think, was playing that day as well, you know what I mean? But they were good. Yeah, I know that was a good team, tough, hard team, you know what I mean? But there was always 2 or 3 games played before Christmas in the league in those days, and the ball would be slowing down, and it suited us, like when we were better, heavier conditions,
Well, look, John, again, thank you very much for joining us, and best of luck with the golf there this morning.
Thank you. And if I get a birdie, I'll be charging you double. All right.
see you, John. Always great to have John on the show, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant. Just quickly, Shane, and we leave the Tip Cork on this. What matchups in particular are you looking forward to? Who does Barra pick up? I'm just interested to see, even from a Cork point of view, who picks up Jason Ford. There's some really, really interesting battles.
I'd say Jason Ford would probably be picked up by... You know what? It really depends on who Tipperary start. Like, do they continue with the same team as last week? And this is going to be in front of 35,000 people. I'm hoping that the Tipperary supporters show up for this one, because they haven't showed up for quite as much.
They will, Shane. I think the mood music has definitely changed significantly in the past 12 months.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see Damien Cahalan pick up Jason Ford. I wouldn't be surprised. Like, I'm wondering, are Conor Bowe and Mark Keogh going to start? I want them both starting. They're both energy, they're both legs, they can both run both ways, and I think Tipperary need that. And I wouldn't be against the idea.
They can run both ways, forwards and backwards. Yeah.
They can go 360. So I think it'd be great to see those two starting. Do I think they'll start? Probably not. And if Tipperary start the same team as the last day out, I think pace will be an issue, and Tipperary will be exposed at times. So in order to counter that, Tip will need to drop a lot of numbers back. And to be fair, they do flood the middle of the field a nice bit. I'd like to see Conor Stakelum starting in the middle of the field, because I think Brian Roach and Dara Fitzgibbon, the two of them, are really important players. I suppose Cathal Barrett, Shane Barrett seems to be the one that, like, if I'm looking at the starting team the last day, that I think makes the most sense. I'd be putting Ronan Maher back full back on Patrick Horgan, because, like, obviously Ronan Maher isn't a speed merchant, and I think that would be a good matchup for him, or Michael Breen, because Michael Breen has pretty good feet as well.
Interesting as well. Isn't Pádraig Maher getting married today, actually? I think. Yeah, and that's funny. And he's obviously he's not going on honeymoon, obviously, and he's going to be at the match on Thursday, and Ronan is best man, and he'll be obviously hurling, and they'll be hoping for a similar impact that Clare got with John Connon last Saturday, I'd say, as well, over Ronan Maher.
Yeah, and you know what? I was just there going to have a quick little look at the match programme from the last day to think, all right, who else on Tip? But sure, of course, you have to look at the full panel.
That's gone. They're getting rid of that for this weekend.
Yeah.
Tipper going back to 1 to 15, normal service resumed. He just said their hand was forced a bit with it the last day, and that they've just changed. They don't want to be putting out any idea of playing mind games or dummy teams or something like that. So they'll be reverting back to the squad number debate is gone for a while now again.
Yeah, so like I just think Tipperary should fill the team with obviously youth and pace, like I've mentioned, but then a middle zone, we'll say. I'm not saying which positions, but I want to see Conor Stakelum in the team. I think his energy and his impact, especially off the bench the last day, we need to see it from the start this day. Dan McCormack, obviously, you're going to say the Bursley bias, but I want to see him in there.
To me, if you're picking any 5 to 12 Tipperary, Dan McCormack has to be in that 5 to 12. To me, he offers exactly what you're looking for, to me anyway. So I'd definitely be having him in there.
And I want to see Alan Tynan in there again. I know he wasn't, outstanding the last day, but I think we've seen enough from him. And like, for example, in that league semi-final against Limerick, fair enough, Tip didn't win it, but there was good signs there. So I want to see the likes of them in there. All to see, right, Cork, great. We know you're great at running, if it's a track meeting, you're going to beat Tipperary every day of the week. But let's put a few road bumps in here and see how you go. So that's where I'd be feeling like Tipperary can do a little bit, cause them a little bit of bother. And I think you were talking to Lyng Cahill during the week as well. It looks like Craig Morgan isn't all that far away. Might take another month or so before he's right. And maybe Seamus Callan and Niall O'Hara aren't too far off either.
Yeah, Niall O'Hara will basically feature if they get out of Munster. That was the kind of impression I got. Callan won't start this weekend, but potentially could feature, but will definitely feature in round 3. Craig Morgan's obviously a long-term injury, but he's getting quite close. And I have to say, one of the things I admire most about Liam Catlin is how he just gets on with things and there's no excuses. So obviously, Barry Heffernan and Craig Morgan are not available for this year, or doesn't look like they're going to be available. He just got on with it, and that's just his way. And it's very admirable. I have to say, he doesn't make any excuses. But I'm just fascinated to see, how can Tip deal with Cork's pace, and if it's a case of Tip have plenty of pace and they're able to counteract that, who are the better hurlers on the day? It's going to be a belter of a game. As I said, I find it very, very difficult to call, so I'm going to go straight down the middle.
Yeah, I think Jake Morris is going to be the difference in this game, and I think Tipperary are going to win because they'll score goals. But I still think it'll be really, really difficult. And question here from Conor Heaney, will Robbie O'Flynn come in for Cork, and for who? I think if he's capable of starting, and if he's capable of playing 50 minutes or something like that, I'd definitely be starting him.
Can I just say something to you as well? And he obviously played the first game of the league. There's an increasing trend, and we talked about it on Monday, of lads not needing to play the league. Mikey Carey's back involved with Kilkenny now. Hasn't featured for Kilkenny since the All-Ireland final last year and just been parachuted back in. Is this a thing of, lads are just looking after themselves really well and conditioning themselves really well, that you can actually afford to do that? Whereas, I don't know if 10 or 15 years ago you could do that. Maybe lads have a different mentality now and they're looking after themselves that well. Look at Shane O'Donnell, look at Stephen Cluxton. Do you know what I mean? Look at TJ Reid as well. And they're all just coming back in seamlessly. Will Robbie O'Flynn start? I think he'd start. If he's fit to start, I think he'd start. Again, he's a fairly combative type of player too. That would offer something a bit different.
If he does start, that's who I think Cathal Barrett will pick up, or Michael Breen, because you could then play him inside with Hoggy, as they like to pronounce
Hoggy
it down
boy,
there.
go on, Hoggy boy.
And then I think Harnedy would go to half forwards. And I think they do like Declan Dalton. They like having Shane Barrett and Luke Meade for different reasons. And I think Conor Lehane could be the one to lose out there, even though, on certain days, and it's happened against Tip a few times, he can kind of light things up. I think it's a fascinating match. And I'm very excited about this. And I presume most of the country is pretty excited about this one in terms of like if they're interested in hurling.
Yeah, expecting it to be high scoring as well, expecting goals. Probably 5 goals all told between the two teams, I'd say as well. I do agree with Adrian there. I don't expect Cathal to pick up Shane Barrett.
Why do you think that, Adrian? Why do you think Cathal Barrett would be wasted on Shane Barrett?
I wouldn't have had Shane Barrett as one of the leading Cork threats in the forward line, shall we say. Barrett generally goes on one of the best forwards on the opposition team, as he did with Tony Kelly. I wouldn't be that surprised if he picked up Patrick Horgan potentially as well. And his pace was able to deny him a hell of a lot of ball. But listen, it'll be played out fairly soon. Looking forward to seeing all the different aspects to it. Breen would match up well with well enough with O'Flynn. He'd probably match up really well with Declan Dalton, I'd say, and might be able to even beat him for pace. But it's so fascinating, the moving pieces of, if he plays, you're picking him up. If he doesn't play, you're picking up someone else. You know what I mean? And then you don't want to get too fixated on what they're doing. Because it was put to Pat Ryan that, a big part of Brian Roach's brief against Waterford was to pick up Jamie Barron and detail on him, and he totally denied that and said, no, we just told him to go out and hurl, and whoever was there was there. That's not the whole truth, but it's probably partially the truth,
Okay, Martina Hayes says, is this match on RT, please? No, it's on GA Go. By the way, look, before we move on back to Leinster, I should say, Noel Connors was talking about his fears for Waterford as their status as a hurling county, that they could, drop down. He's like, I think he's talking to John Fogarty, it's on the pessimistic side, but you could end up where Waterford are like Antrim, who had been struggling for a couple of years and ended up in a lower division. We assume that we're at the top table because of what we've done over the last 20 years, but you could be consumed by the lower divisions quite easily. A strategic plan was put in place 2 years ago, but there doesn't seem to be any implementation of it done. We appear to be light years behind Cork and Limerick at underage level. You're already starting to see it happening in Clare. We seem happy enough to plod along without any real emphasis on the future. It's not rocket science. He gets into the schools and get as many children holding a hurley and kicking a football and hope that would manifest into more players. He goes, I was at the Limerick game and it was difficult because you were surrounded by sea green. In fairness to Cork, they know what's coming, as they've been very successful underage and school level. Undoubtedly, they have a team who can win in All-Ireland. I think this is poor mouthing from Waterford.
Well, I don't disagree about the strategic plan. By all accounts, from chatting to people anecdotally on the ground, things don't seem to be moving as they should be. But it's kind of, they're talking about, Noel was kind of talking about, challenges of population. Waterford's population is, just over 125,000 from the census last year. That's a fair whack. If you look at Kilkenny's population, has never been an issue. That's just over 100,000. Even in Offaly, we've only just under 83,000. Tipperary's is 168,000. We're all in a relatively, take Cork out of it and Dublin out of it. We're all in a relatively similar boat. There's not a massive emphasis on football in Waterford either as well, no more than there is in Kilkenny. So I don't think population or anything like that comes into it. But Jesus, if they end up at the end of this year's Munster Championship with no points, and Waterford have won no championship game at any level in hurling or football at minor, 20 and senior, the optics of it look absolutely horrible.
Yeah, we were down in Waterford, obviously, for that Rowan Moore GA club fundraiser a couple of weeks ago. And one of the big things that was pointed out to us on a number of occasions was how close together the clubs were. So you had Rowan Moore, was it Rowan Moore, Mount Sion and De La Salle, or was it, anyway?
Ballygunner in there as well.
Yeah. They're all on top of each other, and then the rest of the city is more or less, it's slim pickings really in terms of the amount of work being done. Maybe there is good work being done, and maybe I'm misinterpreting slightly what was said, but it just seems that there's a huge concentration of clubs in a small area pulling from probably the same population base, and then there's a lot of the county that isn't really exploiting what they have. So like you pointed out there's a good population base in the county. They just need to make more of it. And then you have a football side of the county too, but it doesn't mean you can't get in there and try and, help develop what's going on in terms of hurling in those areas.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and they have the numbers are not bad. It's just a matter of getting at those numbers and making sure that there's lots of good coaching, and there's just plans put in place from clubs, and that the county are basically enforcing all this and working with the clubs. But it doesn't necessarily seem like that's the case at the moment. I think, from chatting to some people, it's more important about promoting win a house in Dungarvan or wherever it is at the moment, that they're not putting more time into that than maybe putting into getting hurling structures correct in the county and really implementing them.
Yeah, Galway will face Westmeath this weekend, and the Glennon parents won't have to go too far. They won't have to go to different venues or anything like this, because you're going to see Davy Glennon lining out for Westmeath, Ronan Glennon for Galway, and they both often end up between the two 45s. You could have two brothers battering into each other, and then the parents might be looking through their eye and through their fingers.
100% you will. It didn't happen last year. I think Ronan missed the game last year with an injury, but there's nothing sure. And Davy's a real kind of robust kind of player who gets into tackles, and famously wasn't it in the 2012 drawn final? He won the free that Joe Canning. He won it, I would say. He won the free that Joe Canning put over to level it. And wasn't that when Cody was breathing down Cunningham's neck, and there was a bit of a hoo-ah on the sideline? But they'll definitely come into contact fairly regular at the weekend. History would suggest that there's nothing only a massive win for Galway here. Westmeath, of all the teams that they've struggled to throw it down to, they've really struggled against Galway in Leinster Championship and in Division 1 games that they've played. So nothing other than a heavy Galway win here. But yeah, definitely everyone will be keeping an eye on the two Glennons. And it is a difficult one for family. Like, essentially you're going to different games most weekends. Now they're going to different games most weekends to support, one brother or one son or whatever. Now you're going to a game and like, who are you shouting for realistically,
Yeah, Patrick Coleman says Waterford has some of the best of players compared to other counties. It's in the heads they lose. And remember, like, it's only 12 months ago that they were being billed as the second best team in the country. I think they need to be getting an awful lot more out of themselves.
It's only 3 years since they were in All-Ireland final. It's only 2 years since they were in All-Ireland semi-final, beating who to beat along the way. To beat Tip, Galway, you know what I mean? Like,
They've Patrick Fitzgerald, Padraig Fitzgerald, Mark Fitzgerald coming through. The under-20s did very well against Tipperary on Friday night last, despite not having any of those three players. Like, there's hurlers there.
Well, as someone said it to me, I thought it was quite disingenuous what Davey said after one of the league games about, really picking up Waterford players that were on the floor or whatever. And someone made the comparison, like, he wasn't picking up the Renford rejects. Like, he was picking up a squad that has serious talent. And, they need to get points on the board and they need to turn things around. Even a win, one win. They need to break this cycle within the Munster round robin. Whatever it is, it just does not work for them. And they're chasing their tail a bit now to get back. But for all intents and purposes, it looks like they're out of Munster already. Barring they get a couple of big wins and you get 4 points on the board and somehow get positive score difference.
I'm going to have to get some sort of a little bell or klaxon that goes off every time you say the word disingenuous.
Yeah, potentially. You haven't said in the heat of the hunt in a long time, actually, because people play our game bingo, and every time we say certain things, they have a swig or something.
Do you know, Henry Shefflin is saying the under-20 rule needs to go. So this is the whole thing where they can't tog out for senior and under-20 within 7 days of each other. Even like with Cork and the under-20s, Cork have requested that the date of the Munster under-20 final be brought forward to ensure the 7-day gap between the game and the county's round 4 fixture at senior level doesn't clash, so that Owen Downey can tog out. Obviously, Conor Laverty was talking about last week that you can have players playing day after day when it's college and league matches earlier in the year, but now when it's the good stuff that they can't. And obviously managers have let players down over the years. We've seen that.
Yeah.
But, I don't think managers can, they don't really have a leg to stand on, but it is previous managers that have caused the problem for current managers, I suppose, in a way, isn't it?
Kind of, yeah. Well, Henry was just talking about the case of Liam Collins. So I'll just go through this really, really quickly. So Liam Collins was absent from the Galway under-20 squad that fell to Offaly in the Leinster quarter-final last Saturday. And it must be very, very difficult on the player. No more it was than it was for Cottle O'Neill looking at Limerick in the All-Ireland under-20 final last year and thinking, I could make a difference here or whatever. I'm sure the manager are thinking the same. So Henry just said, would Liam Collins have been able to go to Tullamore on Saturday and play a match? Yes, why not? He played 6 minutes with us, so the opportunity should have been there for him to have that. It was taken out of our hands, and we obviously felt that we'd like Liam to be on our bench. But what under 20-year-old, after a disappointing loss to Offaly, would have any problem getting up on a Sunday morning, travelling to Nolan Park, going to a big game in a big crowd, being a substitute, and maybe coming on for 10 or 15 minutes? I can't fathom how that would have an effect on a player. It would be beneficial to him, if anything. I think the ruling just needs to go. I don't see the logic in it, and you need to be fair to those chaps. And he just said here, as well. And it's down a bit to the maturity on behalf of the management teams that they get on, the relationship between them, that we understand where it is. If Liam Collins had woke up on Sunday morning very sore, stiff, and got a lot of belts, and he's on our bench, so be it. He can stay on the bench and not come on the game. We can call that. And he just says as well that, as you said there, the burnout is really December, January, pre-season games, mixing with Fitzgibbon games and all that. I don't think the burnout is now, but I just think the rule has made things even more confusing. And 20 managements don't know whether to have this player available. Senior managements don't know whether to have this player available. If anything, it was a bit more clear cut last year, but it's so messy right now. And I just think it's something that they're going to have to sort out next year.
Yeah, but they're saying we can call that. I totally understand why the GA would say, no, you can't. But I think the 7 days is too much. Is 3 days fine?
Oh, 3 days will be fine, yeah. 3 days. Like a midweek game. It's generally a midweek game and senior championship game at the weekend. Wednesday to Saturday, Wednesday to Sunday, that type of a thing.
Yeah, well, maybe I suppose then they're like, okay, will we have players playing Wednesday, Saturday, week after week after week? But still, you know, a lot of younger players, they're able for that. But I suppose maybe young players now, not fully formed, been thrown out for senior games then back.
I don't think managers will flog them, because if they flog them, they won't have them. Yeah, but they won't. No, like
sure, look at Tommy Conroy doing the cruciate last year because he played county and then league, or sorry, Sigerson and then league day after day. Look at what's happening with the likes of Tony Brosnan playing for 2 teams in the one day. Yes, managers will do this.
Managers, yeah, man. Like, I understand what you're saying, but that's at a different stage of the year. This is
when it's less important. So why on earth are they doing it then? And of course they'll do it now when it matters. If they're doing it when it doesn't matter.
But like, if you look at the case of Liam Collins, he came off the bench he played about less than 10 minutes. Like, I don't think playing those 10 minutes, having played a game the day before, is any issue really on a young player. I don't see it as any issue at all. I just don't understand why we're punishing the best underage players. That to me, that makes no sense, and it's totally contradictory. And maybe we need to make a rule where you just play your own grade and that's it. If that's the case, then that's the case, and you can't play senior or something like that. I don't know, but I don't understand why players should lose or be forced to lose out on, you know, chance to win an under 20 or whatever. Like, don't get me wrong, Offaly have benefited by the fact that Liam Collins wasn't able to play, but that's not right either.
So I'm wondering what sort of a response we're going to see from Conor Cooney and Conor Whelan this weekend.
Conor Heaney just says how our players been punished. They've been punished by not able to be able to play the 2 grades that you know, historically players have always been allowed to play. That's how they've been punished. Sorry.
Yeah. And he also adds that managers will flog them if they're allowed, which I agree with. Not all of them, but some will, as we continue to see with those injuries that we're getting in the early parts of the year. Hugh Paddy says, I think GA are looking at it from a number of nights per week issue. Game training. These lads need recovery time too. Will Conor Cooney or Conor Whelan, either of them, possibly start on the bench? I don't think Conor Whelan will ever start on the bench. But they're like, definitely Shefflin got what he wanted in the other day. He took off his key men who weren't having a great second half for sure. Young lads came in, Declan McLaughlin and Liam Collins got the equalising scores. Lovely position for Henry Shefflin to be in.
Yeah, an ideal position. He mentioned it, and it was very kind of Brian Cody-esque, really. He's just saying that it's a real great sign for other lads in the squad. He said, we've used 22 or 23 players, and when you see the likes of Declan McLaughlin coming in or Liam Collins coming in, they were obviously performing well in training. The other 13 or 14 lads that are on our squad that maybe haven't seen game time yet know that if they're performing in the training ground, they'll get their chance. Like, did you think, like, and I think you mentioned it on Monday, like they're slight enough, like they're not big men, shall we say. They're slight enough kind of fellas, and you're thinking, geez, are they been thrown in at the deep end here? And no, they were able to more than survive in the cut and trust the senior championship hurling. So it obviously shows as well that Henry has no problem throwing somebody in if they're impressing at all on the training pitch. That's a really good sign of a squad, and it's, you know, no one can have any qualms. What's the biggest qualms you have when you're a sub, when, you know, the manager is sticking with the same 17 or 18? And if you're playing stink at training, fair enough, you don't deserve to get on. But if you are actually playing well and you're being competitive and you're marking a guy out of it or doing well against a guy that's playing and you just can't get in, that's really frustrating. So signs suggest that if you're playing well, Henry will throw you in regardless of size, regardless of experience, regardless of anything, and that's a great sign. But the 2 lads would definitely start, I'd say, at the weekend.
Yeah, it's fair annoying not getting your chance when you know the same lads have been stuck with even when they're going stink.
Yeah, sometimes some teams they're hard. It's harder to get off the team than not. Once you're on the team, the hardest part is getting on the team. When you're on the team, you're safe for a while. Would
Conor Whelan still be in Shane's top 5 hurlers? We must do a top 5 soon, because on top of my head, I need a bit more time now to think it over. But worth doing that again soon, wouldn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And we won't think about it either. Just spring it someday. I'll either spring it on you or you spring it on me.
Derek Honan is saying, and this relates to the underage issue, they've tackled the wrong issue. There should not be a crossover between Fitzgibbon and League. 20 should be allowed to play senior, no problem. Okay, so keep the comments coming in on that. Antrim against Kilkenny this weekend. Like Antrim, they're fairly used to playing Kilkenny in recent seasons. And in their league games, they've been relatively competitive. They lost by 10 points, 3 points, and 6 points during the last 3 years. Now, maybe at times, I think maybe the Ballyhale lads weren't always there, and they're a huge part of this Kilkenny team. But Antrim can take some form of confidence from that and the fact that they pushed Wexford really hard last week. So, and obviously drawing with Dublin the week before.
Yeah, well, the game against Wexford could have totally gotten away from Antrim. They conceded 1-19 at half time. They ended up scoring, what did they score in the second half? They were 1-9 at half time. So they ended up getting 17 points in the second half, which is a fair tally when the game potentially looks like it's kind of gone away from you. Like the last time they played a championship game in Cork Park, they drew with Dublin. Are Dublin that much inferior to Kilkenny? Yeah, not that much, so they'll fancy their chances of being competitive again. Do we see wouldn't it be unbelievable were they get points on the board against Kilkenny again? It would further kind of make Leinster even more interesting at the weekend. They have the forwards to do so in the likes of Keelan Mully, Conal Cunning. I think Sean Elliott's out around the middle of the field, Neil McManus, James McNaughton. It's probably at the back where there probably needs to be a bit more focus. You're scoring 126, but you're conceding 130, which is like, if you're conceding 130 to Wexford, you'd fancy Kilkenny to go for the throw to small bit. Even though, am I right in saying Kilkenny haven't scored a goal in the Leinster Championship yet? Yeah, they haven't actually. They scored 28 points last day, and was it 27 against Westmeath? 27 points to 5.
29.
He was like that'll definitely, like, to win big championship games, to win a Leinster Championship, they're going to need to score goals. So maybe Antrim will be the team to maybe feel the brunt of that. But you imagine they'll have green flags in their minds at the weekend.
I'm not sure how much training Mikey Carey would have done, but would you be looking to throw him straight back in as a sub?
Maybe as a sub, but by all accounts, he was sitting with the subs for the last 2 games, and he had been planning to go to San Francisco, I believe, and Derek Lyng is obviously coaxing to stay around. I believe he's doing 2-a-day sessions at the moment, and he's up training a lot up in the Young Ireland's club as well. And I don't know if you'd be throwing him in straight away. The only thing I'd say to you on that is it's a kind of I don't know if that's the game for it now. I don't know if that's the game up in Corrigan Park. It could be a little bit maybe overwhelming for someone that hasn't played hurling realistically in about 6 months. I'd probably see it maybe later on down the line, but it's a good addition to have back. They need all those. He's a really athletic player. Could play anywhere between probably 5 and 9. So a good player to have back. How much will he feature? I'm not sure how much will he feature, but they do have some issues, particularly around the middle of the park. Maybe he could end up there yet.
Yeah, you spent half the show talking about how you don't need to play the league and just go straight into championship. So
that's a different story when you're out in Asia and Australia for 6 months and you're enjoying yourself.
Yeah, but he's probably in great form, coming back high spirits. A week of training. Sure, he's built like a tank. He'd be the fight.
Yeah, as a young fella, like, he's 23. Yeah, if it was 27 or 28, you'd be saying something different. But
yeah, he'd be fully charged after the break.
Yeah, it depends how much you're looking after your diet, etc., and much work you're doing while you're on holidays as well. We don't really know that, but he'll feature at some stage. He'll definitely feature at some stage.
Okay, Joe McDonagh Cup, Leisure against Kildare. Huge poisonous rivals in football. I don't know if that translates to hurling so much, but Leisha's form after losing to your boys Offaly, who are table toppers, so obviously they've franked that form. Laois hammered down, and they drew with Carlow, and I think they were 6 points ahead at one stage, 7 points ahead during the second half, and it was a late penalty from Marty Kavanagh, last puck of the game actually, that drew the game. And Marty Kavanagh loves to stick in Willie Maher. If you go back to the St. Mullins against Tula game a few years ago as well, that just occurred to me. Yeah, that just occurred to me as I was preparing for the show. Obviously, I felt that one too. Other side, Kildare, they badly need a win. They have not been going well at all. Pointless up to this stage, as are Down. So that looked like a relegation battle in the last game when they meet the Mourne County. But Kildare really don't want to become a yo-yo team going between Christy Ring and Joe McDonagh, do they? No.
Well, if you look at it, before that Division 2A league final, we definitely weren't talking about the prospect of Kildare going back down to the Christy Ring or anything like that. Definitely not. Based on recent form, Laois should have to be fairly overwhelming favourites for this game. They put 7 goals past Down. They'd be really disappointed with letting that Carlow game slip. They looked like they were after putting themselves in a winning position. Couldn't see past the Laois win here, to be honest with you. It has to be a Laois win here. Kildare, what did they score? They only scored 14 points the last day. Like, their tallies have gone down drastically. Then you look at the Offaly Kerry game. Offaly are on 6 points and look like they're going to be in a final, but they need more points. Another win here would have them on 8 and definitely in a final. Even a draw would have them on 7 and with a fairly good chance of being in a final. Then and we've had probably a score just to spare over Kerry the last couple of times we played. Then from a Kerry point of view, like, they've already they drew it. Who did they draw with? They drew it Carlow. And so they need to get a result here. I think they're on 5 points, but they've got tough games to come, and the Offaly game included. They need to get something out of this game. But
you're being disingenuous here. I think you need to talk about this in terms of, like, Offaly are going to sow it into Kerry because they relegated us to the Christie Ring a few years ago.
So we sold it into them the last couple of times we played them. But
sowing it
into them is like only is winning by a score, because realistically there's not much else between them. But if Kerry lose at the weekend, their chances of getting to a McDonagh Cup final, would this be their 4th in a row? I think it would be. Their chances will be greatly decreased. So they need to get something out of the weekend.
Okay. And then the final game of the weekend, down against Carlow. There was a bit of controversy about what was being said and accusations and so on and so forth when they last met a year ago. Carlow need a win to stay in the reckoning. They've drawn with Kerry and Laois, and I suppose Down obviously need to get off the mark in terms of getting points here, because it is looking like it's going to be a relegation showdown with Kildare. And then the final game, the All-Ireland Under-20 Hurling Championship B final, Derry and Roscommon. A big day for both counties there. A bit of success would be very welcome to either county. Sully 180 said this is in terms of maybe Mikey Carey coming back into the team. Hard on lads who are slogging away since November that a fellow walks back in.
Yeah, it's a tricky one. I suppose it depends on how bedded in the fella was in the squad before. He's been in there for a couple of years, or he's just springing a fella in. Like, remember back in the day when, with the odd time anyway, when it was 6 weeks between, we'll say, the end of league and the championship, and to be around the club games, and if someone played well, they just get called in to the county. That used to be the way anyway when I was there. There'd always be a couple of lads, and you'd always see lads trying even harder than normal, because they know, like, I've gotten away with it. I have to train for the last 5 months, show a bit of form in the club, and I could be in there, get gear, etc., and be part of championship hands, and potentially get the GPA grant as well. Do you know what I mean? Like, there was a lot in it for guys. But Carey's obviously a young fella. He would know a lot of those guys well. Lyng obviously trusts him enough to come back into.
Yeah, and we have a final comment here from Pádraig O'Malley saying, what do you think of the groups in the Sam Maguire up Mayo? So we'll bring up those groups and have a quick look at them again. So let's say it goes on form and it's Kerry, Dublin, Mayo, Cork, and it's going to start off with Kerry against Mayo there. Assuming that that's the case, that's a pretty tasty group. Obviously, look, there's only 4 teams going to be knocked out after all of this, which takes a lot of the jeopardy out of it. But, like, that's certainly a tasty group. Like Galway, Armagh, Tyrone, Westmeath, that would also be pretty good. Yeah,
there's some, like, realistically, Group 1 is going to be Kerry, Louth, Mayo, Cork, realistically, isn't it? Like, we were expecting Dublin to win the Leinster final. That's tasty enough. Disappointed, maybe. I would have liked if it thrown up a Louth versus Tyrone game and Mickey Hart had to manage against Tyrone. That would have been fascinating. Group 2 is probably looking like, Galway, either Armagh, Derry, Tyrone, and Westmeath. Tough group for Westmeath, you'd have to say there. Group 3, Dublin, Sligo, Roscommon, Kildare. Dublin are going to end up probably playing Kildare again, and I think that's down to be Kildare's home game. But Connacht's Park is not available now, so will Glen Ryan give home venue and go play in Croke Park? Probably not. But it'll be interesting to see where they play there. I think in the last group then, either Armagh and Derry, probably Clare, Monaghan and Donegal. From a Donegal point of view, they could have got a worse group, I would have said, considering how bad their fortunes are. They only need to, beat what would be, they only need to beat one team there, should we say, the team that finishes 4th, to potentially get out. I think it's very convoluted that we're only losing 4 teams from 16. Like, that, to me, that doesn't make sense, and that would be probably changed next year, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I just to bring it back up here again, you could have a very winnable group. Like, let's say Dublin and Galway win their provincial finals, which we're expecting. Group 4 could be,
Yeah.
very winnable for Roscommon. Louth, Sligo, Roscommon, Kildare. And I mean, Kildare are obviously not going to fear Roscommon either. And the Davy Burke coming up against his native county, that would be quite interesting. But that would be quite a weak group, wouldn't it?
Yeah, well, I'm looking at Group 4 as well, and I'm thinking Clare will look at beating Donegal in Group 4 as well. And I'm thinking they'll fancy their chances of getting through. Like, there's none of them would frighten you too much. I don't think there's a group of death anyway, I'll put it to you that way.
Yeah, like even if it was a case of, it really should be just 8 counties come out and that's it.
Yeah, it should be top 2, realistically. There is a fascinating element to it as well, the same as the Super 8s, that one of those games is going to be played, one game for each team is going to be played on neutral soil. So you have a team from maybe up north and a team from south meeting somewhere in the middle. And I think that that's fascinating for the likes of a Port maybe a Mullingar and O'Connor Park as well. And it'll, you potentially get to see within your locality, get to see teams that you wouldn't normally see. We've also managed to brush over, and this is the way it is, unfortunately. We've talked for 2 hours and we haven't talked about the Munster football final. And that's just the way it is, unfortunately, because that's its standing at the moment. That's the standing at the moment. And just the fact that we think Kerry are probably going to breeze through and win another Munster.
Like, the best we can do is maybe give some of the stats from the past and talk about their recent championship meetings and say, well, this is what we've seen before. Kerry are obviously going to win this game. We're not trying to be disingenuous. We're not trying to talk down Clare. It's just the way it is. Like, the last 5 championship meetings, Kerry 322, Clare 111. That was 2021. Pretty competitive in 2019, 115 to 12. 2018, 32 points to 10. 2017, 118 to 112. That was competitive. 2016, 216 to 11. So what that's telling us in recent times is it's either going to be give or take 6 points or it's going to be an annihilation.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Kerry have won 9 of the last 10 Munster titles outside of when your boys shocked the nation in 2020. And it's amazing to think that
delighted the nation.
Well, both really. That someday. That was someday with Vic winning and Cavan winning. Like, that was unbelievable.
But like the average victory that Kerry have had against Clare in their last 5 championship meetings is 12.4 points. And the last time they beat them in a Munster final was 1992. And before that it was 1949. So why haven't we previewed it so much? I mean, because why would you?
Yeah, but like, is it? To me, it's totally mad that game is on TV. I know they're the All-Ireland champions, but and it's a provincial final. Should that be on TV over Tip and Cork? I don't think it should. Being honest with you, is the average punter going to be more interested in Tip and Cork or Kerry and Clare? I definitely be saying Tip and Cork.
Well, look, obviously this is to drive subscriptions to GAA Go, and if games are going to be broadcast, money has to be paid to ensure that can happen. So, I mean, there is just a capitalist sort of reality to it.
The only thing I'd say about it as well, and I'm a chief giving out, chief person giving out, that people would be like, oh, this should be on telly, that should be on telly. Like, GAA Go is essentially only taking the Sky games that were on Sky. Like, it's not, there's a load of other games that would never have been on telly anyway. Do you know what I mean? And people are saying, why don't you have this or why don't you have that? They're GAA Go are essentially showing the games that would have been on Sky. And anybody complaining about why other games aren't being broadcast or whatever, those games were never broadcast. Like, to be fair, we do have it better than we've ever had before. Should we have to be paying for it? I kind of said it as well. I tweeted there a week or two ago. I would prefer to be giving my money to GAA Go than Sky. That's just personally. But because I'm paying for a subscription where this is what I want to see. I want to see this game, not where I want to see, some highfalutin, sport that's on Sky that I have no interest in, and they're bombarding me with emails.
By the way, earlier I mentioned that I said there was Tony Brosnan that played for both Sigerson and Kerry last year. It was actually Jack Savage. Yeah, just occurred to be there. One final thing then to talk about, I suppose, has to be the Tailteann Cup, because we've glossed over that. Group 1, Cavan, Offaly, Laois and London. Second group, Meath, Down, Tipperary, Waterford. So Tip will be meeting Waterford again after meeting them in the provincial championship already. Limerick, Wicklow, Longford, Carlow, and Fermanagh, Antrim, Wexford, Leitrim. Now, look, obviously these aren't the brightest lights in terms of like you'd be mad to go and watching all these teams. You know, if you're talking in the broader sense of Gaelic football in Ireland, but like there are going to be a lot of really good games in there, and it's going to end up once it gets to the knockout stages. This will get very tasty.
Yeah, looking at Group 4 in particular, Fermanagh would obviously be favourites. Antrim, who I believe played a Dublin selection the other night in a senior football challenge up the country. Wexford and Leitrim, they'll all be, you know, Antrim, Wexford and Leitrim will all fancy their chances of getting out there. Offaly are playing Cavan. Cavan were obviously finalists last year. Throw Laois in there. Anytime Offaly play Laois is always interesting. London have showed that they're pretty competitive too. From a Meath point of view, Meath and Down would be favourites to get out of Group 2. Tip and Waterford will be trying to cause a bit of an upset, but it got plenty of traction last year, and I hope it's the same this year, because when you're looking at those games, you're kind of thinking, you know, on a given day there'll only be a score or two between nearly all of the teams, and essentially like that's what you're looking for in a second tier championship. Alan Tobin asked their question, what have we made of London starting the Christie Ring? They've been absolutely flying. Not too many people would have predicted that they would have beaten Meath in the game, so they look like they're already in pole position for a knockout place.
Absolutely. Is there anything else we want to touch on before we finish up? We've a fair bit covered.
Yeah, no, we've a fair bit covered. We might do a top 5 hurlers on at the weekend, and maybe if Tip win, you might be able to wangle a Tip player in there.
Yeah, I'll certainly be doing my best. Jake Morris, keep it going this weekend. Just a reminder, if you want to get a live GA club fundraiser going, let us do it for you. Events at OurGame.ie. We'll give you all the details of how we're going to do that. If you're looking to get a coaching clinic as well, also email events@OurGame.ie. We'll bring 3 brilliant coaches to your club. I think that's pretty much it for the show. If you want to get the audio podcast, it's going to be at patreon.com/OurGame.
Just on the live fundraiser as well, ideal setup the weekend of a big game. Ideal if there's a big game coming up in your county, be it your Joe McDonough game or a Tolchin Cup game or whatever it is, the two boys will rock the town and raise funds for your club.
Certainly will. Great stuff. We'll see you all again on Monday.
Cheers, Chet.